Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Transatlantic Call-In Show. This is the place where you get to call in and talk to trans people about any and every question related to trans issues that you want. So if you are an ally or a family member or a friend or an enemy of the trans movement, trans ideology, this is the place for you to call in and talk to us and get our thoughts and answers to your questions. I'm going to be your steering host today, Arden Hart, and with me is Luxander. What's going on, Lux?
Not a lot. It's still like a busy Thursday. I almost forgot we had Takis. I went to like 2 grocery stores, and then I had my workout. So I am pumped and ready to go. Very excited.
Nice.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. I've had a really good day. Also, let me see. Okay, so I've been wanting to show you guys my emerald tree skinks for ages, but they've never been in the mood during a show. I think they might be in the mood now. I might totally get rejected. I'm going to try to pull one out and see. They're very social and they only come out when they want to. So sorry to derail the show at the beginning, but
Immediately.
Drop my headphones first. It's part of the ritual.
If my cat walks anywhere near me, I'm going to pick him up and force him to be on the show too. That's how it works.
Oh my god. Okay. Get your jumps out of your system. So this is one of my emerald tree skinks. They are
Oh, baby.
So social. I also can't hear anything because my headphones are gone. Where'd you go? Oh, she's in my hair. They're really cute. They just love to run everywhere, and they're so adorable. Where'd you go? Are you still on my hair?
I can
or
see
on
it,
my
but
back?
she doesn't know where it is.
They ran away. Where'd you go?
It's just right there on your shoulder.
Hold on. Did it jump to the floor? I genuinely don't know. Is it on my shoulder?
Nope, other one.
Ah, there you are. Hey, she leaped onto the
jumped
keyboard.
onto the floor.
Okay, come on. All right, I'll put her back. She's good.
Always exciting. I love how her feet disappear into the background. That's very funny. Like at the bottom of the leg.
I did get it. Thank you. Okay. So sorry, chat.
Adorable.
It's the fun with taking them out. When I'm not on a show, obviously, if they just run around on my body, it's not a big deal. But okay.
It was really funny. You were like, where is it? And we could all see that it was on your shoulder.
They're so small and so light that I don't really feel them. And they're still like probably like 60% of the way to full size. So they have quite a bit of growth left to do.
Nice.
Somebody asked, how's the gecko bite? Yes, the nice gecko that you all have seen several times bit me really hard on my middle finger last night. I was trying to push him off and he was like, argh. Okay. Now that my derailing of the show has thoroughly dismantled our entire flow of progress, we have a show to do here, and normally we like to start our shows with polls. So, last week's poll, when Lux and Ben were here, was, should trans people's driver's licenses / birth certificate reflect their current gender or their birth sex? With 11,000 votes, 80% said your current gender and 20% said sex assigned at birth, which I think is interesting. I don't know. I didn't read through the comments this time. That seems like a higher proportion than I would have normally guessed our audience would give for a question like this. But I don't know. Did you look into any of that?
I read some of the comments. We had I wonder if we should have added a couple other options to this poll, because one of the main responses that I saw was you shouldn't have gender on those IDs or like on your driver's license. But people also seemed to have different opinions about birth certificate versus driver's license. People seem to think that like your birth certificate is like a record of the event of your birth and therefore shouldn't be updated. But first of all, it's an identity document, so it should reflect your name and your gender accurately. Second of all, did you all know, those of you who disagreed on the premise of the birth certificate, did you know that when you're adopted, you can get your adopted parent's name put on your birth certificate? So, like, that's just more evidence that it's an identity document and not like a record of what happened at the time of your birth necessarily. I mean, yeah, like they're not going to change your weight on your birth certificate or whatever, but yeah, personal opinion, you should be able to update it. But yeah, I think that like the birth certificate aspect of the question changed people's answers a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know we have talked before on the show about eliminating gender markers from like federal ID documents, just because really in today's age, do we really need that? I'm sure they're going to immediately know all of your social media information just by your name and be able to look you up and find out who you are, who you're presenting yourself as, what you look like. We already put pictures on IDs. So I definitely think I agree that we don't need them on those documents. But if given an option between, change it to reflect my current gender or have it only reflect my sex assigned at birth, I think the answer is pretty obvious there.
Yep.
Just as a matter of safety for trans people, I think it's having your IDs reflect who you are currently is more important.
Agreed.
Sorry, I'm out of breath. That whole ordeal with the gecko, not the gecko, the skink totally threw me off. All right. This week's poll reads, do public school teachers have a right to dead name trans students, alienating them so long as it comports with their religious views? So Lux, you kind of pitched this one. Did you want to take a run with your takes on this one?
Sure. Yeah. So
you're muted, actually.
Oh, am I muted? Why?
Doesn't
make any sense.
Nope, I can't hear you now.
Nope.
Sorry for this episode. We're starting off on a great foot. No. What happened? All of a sudden, is it me? Is it my headphones? Wait.
Chat.
Oh,
okay. The chat can hear me.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Chat can hear me the whole time.
It was me.
Okay.
It was totally my fault. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So the premise of this one is that there was a lady, a teacher, an English teacher, who didn't want to use the correct pronouns for her students, two trans students in her classroom. Didn't want to use their pronouns or their name, and then she got fired for it, and then she's now suing the school district, even though they provided her with numerous accommodations. Like, well, you could just use the student's last name, like Potter, Malfoy, classic situation there. And the reason she gave was that it's a religious exemption that she should have. So yeah, there's a couple of different angles to this question. The judge said that her using those pronouns would be teaching LGBTQ plus issues, but for some reason her not using those pronouns is not her teaching her religious beliefs to students. There's just numerous areas in which this is quite silly. It was Aaron in the Morn who did the article that I read about it. So yeah, that's kind of the premise of the question is if you are claiming a religious exemption, should you have the right to dead name or misgender trans students, basically? And obviously the answer is no. You shouldn't have the right to bully teenagers because you have a religious belief. I don't know. It seems clear to me.
Yeah, I think it quite obviously creates a hostile learning environment for trans teens and or for trans students in general. And so it just kind of seems confusing to me that if the priority of students in school is that they are able to focus and learn and get a good education, we're talking about public schools, by the way. So these are state-funded schools, taxpayer-funded schools. I think we would want to be invested in as much success as possible, and name accommodations are something that we give to every other student. If the student had messaged her and been hey, I want to go by my middle name now, not for any trans reasons, just because, maybe for whatever reason that was what they wanted, would she still have the same objection? Or does she want to use your biological name? Or is
she
this
said that? Yes.
Yeah,
she said your biological name.
Right. I saw that part. So I'm is this an investment in the biological name, truly that, or is that a dishonest front? I suspect is the case. A dishonest front for I want to specifically only do this to target trans people. In which case the answer should obviously be no. They should not be allowed to do that. So
post in the poll. Post your comment. Do it.
Definitely go get involved. That's on if you go to the Lightning's YouTube channel, go to the community tab or the post tab. This is where you will find the community polls to get involved in. So that was our introduction. Thank you for all the chaos, my mess ups, the lizards, everything. I appreciate you guys. We have callers on the line. Lux, if you're ready, we can
I'm so ready. Let's do it.
All right. Let's take them in order they came in for now. We've got Martin, pronouns are any, all in California, wondering our thoughts on using any, all pronouns and passing privilege. So Martin, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Hey, not much. Basically, I'm calling in because the prompt is just something I wanted to get out of my head on, because I've been using any all whenever like the field arises. Never had any issues, but I just had some thoughts and arguments with myself, thinking back to like 8+ years ago in the early days of people like asking for pronouns, and how there was some discourse of like the act of like in a group setting asking for pronouns would out the fact that there was someone there not passing, and just ties into passing privilege. So I just wanted to get out of my head and hear some other thoughts about it.
Yeah. You want to go, Lux?
I mean, my opinion has been that we should normalize introducing ourselves with our pronouns in like every situation. Because like I kind of understand if people are like, wow, I've clocked that there's a trans people here, let me ask you your pronouns or whatever. Like it makes sense if you are in a specifically queer space or a trans space, that like introducing yourself with your pronouns might be just kind of part of the thing. But yeah, I think it would be great if we could normalize it in more situations. Or, you know, if you feel the urge to ask someone their pronouns, I always say like you should just introduce yourself with your own pronouns, and that opens a window for that person to share theirs if they want to. But like, we're also dealing with people who might be questioning or not out of the closet yet, or who might be stealth in most situations in their life, and they don't necessarily want it to be like a conversation that they're now having about being trans. So you just kind of have to be sensitive and give people the opportunity to share, but like not press them if they don't want to, basically.
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of that sentiment. I have been personally in the experience before where somebody in a group of friends notices that I'm probably not my gender assigned at birth, and asks my pronouns in front of the whole group, but doesn't say anything to anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a super uncomfortable situation to be put in, for sure, because it does just basically otherize you, right? It puts a spotlight of that's the trans person on you, like the bat symbol or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I do agree fundamentally, though, that I think it'd be better if we were all just asking everyone their pronouns all the time, and then it wouldn't be weird, nobody would be offended, and we would be able to respect everyone at a baseline. That would be the ideal to get to. But yeah, it's hard to know where to start with that, because there have been times where I've seen trans people, well, you know, people who I'm confident are trans out in public for whatever reason, if they're wearing something, and wanted to be like, hey, I'm Arden, my pronouns are she, her, what's yours? To try to get that conversation started. But like you were saying, Lex, I was like, I don't know this person, I don't know where they're at in their journey, I don't want to put an undue stress on them, that like just based on my own assumptions about what they might like or prefer. So yeah, it's a weird situation to navigate.
You have to go with the classic, I love your hair. That's how we queer people say, like, I see you and I see that you're queer.
Oh my God, that's so true.
Yep.
Yeah, no, sorry, just to clarify, like I brought that up as a kind of backdrop to, just because me personally, like I'm cis guy, but I don't feel like strongly attached to my gender. So whenever I see like the questionnaire or like just the prompt, or like on any kind of bio, whatever, it's like I always put any all, because I personally don't have a strong preference, or really any preference. And I was just, the main thing is like with that kind of context of what you were just responding to. Do you think there's like any basically what's your first thought when you see like, oh, this person's like clearly just male presenting and just goes by any, like, is there, or if you found out like, oh, someone's cis guy but they're putting any, like, is there any like associations or interpretation of that maybe I wouldn't want to put out there, that maybe I'm not thinking of with that kind of context in mind?
I think sorry, do you want to jump on that?
No, you go ahead. I have a couple thoughts. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I think it depends on the context. Like when you're calling into shows here on the line, I will say people who are like anti-pronoun will sometimes list themselves as any all. So in this context, sometimes that does put up a red flag for me. But on its own, I think any all pronouns is fine. And like my first assumption isn't that like, oh, this person's a troll or this person's hostile, but it does make me go, I should pay really close attention to what they're saying, because if any dog whistles come up, then I'm probably right about that being a red flag. But like you, Martin, you came in, and the way you phrased your question in your situation, it was very obvious to me that that's just your preference, and that you aren't like coming in here with dog whistles or being hostile towards trans people. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem, but I will say in certain contexts where people might be dealing with somebody who does something like that, it could make somebody ask questions. But I don't think it should be a problem.
I would also say that when people use any all pronouns, it's like they're inviting me to use any all pronouns. Like, it's like when someone lists pronouns like they/she, the impression that I get is that they want you to use both, but maybe use they a little bit more often. So if someone says my pronouns are any all, if like as a trans and queer like aware person, that to me sounds like, oh, I should try to mix it up a bit. Which like it's not like a bad thing necessarily. It's just about like, if you're ever interacting with queer people, they might take that as like, oh, well, she wants me to sometimes say they or he or she or whatever, you know, like regardless of how you look.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like you both basically gave the two sides of like basically what I kind of expected. Cause yeah, like I just by happenstance, hang around a lot of queer people, and it's never been an issue, like ever. Mm-hmm. It's just something that I wanted to just hear a voice other than my own, like just respond to just the topic.
Yeah. I will say there are some like trans people in the online space who can be like randomly hostile towards like cis people using pronouns, or people who are like cis presenting, identifying as non-binary. That is definitely a thing that happens. But like I said to, I don't remember if it was on this show or no, it was Tuesday night on Chewed Gum. Generally, I find that in real life, people are not like that. It's very much an online thing where people will get weirdly hostile about these niche things. So if you're saying it hasn't been a problem in your life so far, then I would say you're probably fine. You're probably doing it in a respectful way.
Yeah, I'm very aware that there are people who are just dumb and annoying online, and it just part of why I wanted to call it just to kind of like, because I'm aware, like, not quite in a bubble, but I have a relatively small social circle, and then I see stuff online. It's like I know intellectually to discard stuff online, but it's like intuitively it can be hard to like separate that out. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted out of the call. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Martin. I appreciate it. You have a lovely day.
All right. You two do as well. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Sweet. All right.
I never want to be rude, but I'm like, we'll be hearing from her again next year, you know? Like,
right.
There was someone in chat who was like, that sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of trans people have been down that road before, I'll say. Okay, real quick before we move on to the next call, I want to do some announcements. So let me see if I can pull up next week's schedule while I'm vamping here to fill space. All right. Oh, nope, that is the wrong one. Here we go. This is the one I need. So if you are interested in maybe some of the other shows we produce here on the line, maybe you want to talk about God and religion, you should call The Sunday Show. This Sunday at 2 p.m. Central, it's going to be Seth Andrews and Aaron Adair. And Sunday After Dark is going to be Jimmy Snow and Eve Was Framed. So if you want to talk about religion, that's a place you can do that. Monday on Skep Talk, it's going to be John Gleason and David Fitzgerald. I imagine there's going to be something about Jesus mythicism there, since that's a kind of area of expertise from those two. Tuesday's Chewed Gum is going to be the OG team, Eve and Alyssa. And then Wednesday on the Hang Up, Matt Dillahunty is going to be joined by Durante Lamar. So I'm really excited to get him on. It's been a long time coming, and I'm really excited to see how he does on our shows, because I think he's got a lot of really valuable input. So yeah, I am so excited for all those shows. Who are you thinking next? Does any call look interesting to you?
Well, first of all, everybody has to hit the like button. We will not continue until you do that. Okay?
That's right.
Let's see. I mean, nobody's really sticking out a whole lot today. I would be okay with just taking them as they are so far.
Yeah, okay. So up next, we're going to take Tiana, pronouns are she, her, from Croatia. Tayana, you are live, and please correct me if I mispronounce your name at all. But go ahead. What do you want to talk about today?
That's okay. Tayana, but that's okay. I'm very grateful for you taking my call again. We talked, I think, a month ago about non-binary, and that was very helpful. But my topic is neopronouns and trigender, but neopronouns is more interesting to me because I had a lively discussion with my daughter. She's a queer, and it turns out I'm more open than she is about neopronouns. I don't understand them as well, but how do I say this? I don't have to live their life or understand their life and live the experience to respect them. But on the other hand, as a straight ally, I think it's very important for us to understand, so we can explain to other people who are on the fence or against that, to explain thoroughly what that means. So maybe they change their mind, just like my colleague. We were talking about non-binary, and I told her what you told me, how non-binary people feel, and I explained that to her, and she was, yes, just like me. Yeah, I can see that. And she's I have to mention, she's a Christian Catholic, and but she's an ally, and she supports LGBTQ community, but she was struggling with non-binary as well. With neopronouns, there is a content creator on TikTok that every day she has a new neopronoun that she tries to explain. My daughter showed that to me on TikTok, and for that day it was Moss, M-O-S-S. And I was like, okay, for me, I really don't care in a sense. You can be what you want to be. I really don't care as long as you don't harm people around you. I really don't care. I'll support you. I'll respect you, but I don't understand. And it's important for me to understand so I can spread that knowledge to people who are, like I said, against it or trying to, how do I say this? I'm sorry for my English.
You're doing great.
That's basically it. I would like to understand how can someone say I identify as a moth or as a tree or as a butterfly, because you don't have experience of those things. Although they are alive things, you can't have their experience like you have experience of a human being. So could you please explain that to me so I can understand? And my daughter, I think she's also listening, because that is a point of contention for her. Although I have to say, I couldn't explain my position to her, but if I was against that, she would jump to defense, although she doesn't understand. So what can you do for me and for her?
So I really appreciate your perspective on this. Like, I really highly value when like non-queer people, they're like, I want to understand this, not so that I can support you, but so that I can help like explain it to other people who might not be on board. So I just want to put that out front. Like, I really appreciate that that's your approach to this. I'm like the token non-binary on the show. So honestly, you said Moss pronouns, and I was like, that's so cool. I would love to do, like, Ash honestly would consider doing that. I think that a lot of trans people, even binary trans people, kind of have this sort of the same response that people have about like, well, how could you know what it's like to be a woman? You've never been a woman. Like, you know, of course, after it's been a few years, if you have that lived experience, you start to pass and look like a woman, then that might kind of go away some. But I think that a lot of us get that right up at the beginning of like, well, how, like, you're not a man. You didn't grow up as a man. How could you know what it's like to be that? I would offer that concepts like animals and plants and stuff are like more socially coherent than the idea of being a man or a woman, because those concepts are not like as dynamic as like what a man or a woman is. That depends. Like the the gender expectations in Croatia are probably pretty different from the gender expectations in the US versus like China versus like Germany. Like every country and every culture has its different baggage around that. And sometimes like you're just like, wow, I really vibe with that thing. It's not like I literally think that I am a plant, but rather that like there's like a flavor, a connotation to the word moss and the feeling of being connected to nature and things that I think can resonate with people. And we also have like sort of historical examples of, oh, like this guy, his like symbol is the lion. He's the lion. It's very Game of Thronesian, actually. And it's because like the lion has this concept, right? That we can kind of, it's probably going to differ from society to society a bit too, but like we're ascribing strength and pride to that person. So that's kind of how I tend to think of these things. I don't use one of those kind of neopronouns for me personally, but I can kind of like, I really do vibe with the people who are like, I am tree gender. I'm like, yes, I love nature so much. And it's just a way of infusing your personality with that, reverence almost for nature or for the lion or whatever. I don't know if that clarifies things at all.
A little bit, because that's a little bit like I try to explain that to my daughter. The point of my not understanding is if that person identifies, let's say, as moss. If I'm talking about that person in the third person, when she's not here, I'm not talking to her, but to other people about that person. Do I say he, she, moss, they? That's the confusing part for me. If I'm talking about them, especially in Croatian language, because we have very much trouble with non-binary people, because Croatian language is not constructed for that particular gender, but this is on a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. So I would like to be respectful to that person, even though that person is not here. You see, I'm trying to not misgender them, but I don't know how to talk about them when I'm talking about them to some other person or some other people.
You look like you want to hop in, Arden.
I mean, yeah, I have thoughts. I just didn't want to, I think the trans femme perspective has been shared on the show many times, so I'm trying to not overstay my welcome on the conversation. I will say, I think when it comes to neopronouns like moss, or like I've heard some iterations of them, I think my only, and Luxander could probably help me on this too. I think my only confusion is the same thing that you're expressing, Tayana, is the utility of certain pronouns, because generally pronouns are supposed to be this like easily accessible thing that we can use to replace a name. And I think, first of all, I want to clarify before I finish what I'm saying. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it. That doesn't mean that, it's like wrong or bad or anything like that. Yeah, I think sometimes the utility of using neopronouns can be a blockade that my brain runs into, but I think probably much like they, them, and it's a thing that the more you use it, the less awkward and uncomfortable it becomes for you. It does feel like it stops being a pronoun at a certain point, because it's like almost like changing the part of speech the way when it gets more niche and more independent like that and starts to become more like a nickname in some sort of way. But yeah, I guess I don't spend much time worrying about what confusion I have with it, because there are like way more important battles to fight than worrying about. Maybe when we have perfect equality, we can have debates about which neopronouns are uwu valid. Until then, I'm just kind of like, if you're not cis, you're probably on my team. So
yeah,
I think that
it does function a little bit more like a nickname, I think, at that point, because like my question would be, okay, how do you?
Yes,
so like
we
have like he, him, his. So we have these like different context, and then the possessive pronoun. So I think for moss, I'm maybe the TikTok person went into a little bit more detail about this, but I'm assuming that you would just start using it in the same way that there are people who are like, I don't want you to use any pronouns. Like my friend Dizzy is kind of like, Dizzy doesn't like any pronouns. So you just have to say Dizzy's name anytime you're referring to Dizzy. And so Moss kind of enters the same linguistic space where you're just like, yeah, I'm going to see Moss. Moss is going to bring Moss's friends. And like, it kind of gets a little bit repetitive. So yeah, it can be tricky. And sometimes it can feel a little bit superfluous, I think. And I think that's like reasonable to point out that like, how many different pronouns are we going to expand to as far as their utility goes? Because typically, yeah, we like some languages have like one third person pronoun and it's non-gendered, or they have a plural one and a singular one or whatever. So yeah, like it does kind of seem a little bit myopic at a certain point, and I respect that. Yes, like I used to ask my friends who use zero pronouns, I'm like, can I just use they? You know that I'm not misgendering you. Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think it's just because there isn't a clear social role for non-binary people to inhabit. And even with they, them pronouns in English, there is starting to be like a coherent set of stereotypes around that people might not respond to. So, I mean, people are just trying to carve out their niche and figure out what makes them feel the best. And most of us only do this online. I don't ask people to use its pronouns for me in my real life. I just let people use whatever at this point. I prefer they, them for people who meet me in real life, but I don't ask people to do anything at this point. I just don't care very much. So I think that we're ultimately talking about behavior that is, what we call like extremely online behavior when we use like hyper-specific neopronouns. And it's more of a thing that you're using with other queer people rather than a thing that you're trying to mainstream to a broader, like, non-queer society, if that makes any sense.
Yes. I mean, I was thinking for a few days now, it would be really, really nice if we could come to the point where all of the society really don't care about sexuality or about my pronoun. I don't.
It would be great.
I don't care. And I saying that with a place of love. I really don't care. You can be whatever you want to be. If you're a nice person, respectful person, don't harm anybody, I'm with you. And that comes to my second topic. I could just take a little of your time. Transgender, as a person who is identifying as a man, woman, and non-binary all at the same time. Well, that is a concept I really, really don't understand, because how can you be three persons, just like God, Holy Ghost, and Jesus, at the same time? That concept is I respect that person. You see, I don't know how to refer to them, because that's not any all pronouns. That's gender specific, three genders in one at the same time. That's like black and white and gray all at the same time. I would understand if I'm black, I'm white, and I'm gray, because when you mix those two, you get gray. But this is black, white, and gray at the same time. And no, I'm not saying that I'm drawing the line there, but that is a totally new concept that I don't know. It's I'm feeling like I'm not saying that that person is trying to gain attention or anything like that, but I think that it's making a disservice to queer community, to trans community, because I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. I'm really struggling with that particular concept.
I get the angle you're coming at, although I'll say we get some iteration of that kind of question a lot, like, oh, don't you think this sort of like non-typical gender expression is harming the community at large or something? And I'll say, generally speaking, the answer is always no to me for most of those kind of questions, because the people who are harming the trans community are overwhelmingly, inarguably the far right. I don't really see a meaningful threat to the trans community coming from within the trans community. Similarly to you, I don't necessarily understand. Oh my god, that kitty is adorable.
He's huge. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Similarly to you, I don't necessarily always understand people's gender identity, but I don't need to understand them to accept them and validate who they are. And actually, Lux gave a great description. I think it was not the last episode you were on with Ben, but the one before that, about similar neo-genders. I think somebody asked about like dear gender or something, and I love the answer you gave. It really clicked with my brain and like made a lot of sense. So maybe, Tayana, go back and look for that. So Luxander and Dr. Ben were on. It wasn't the most recent one last week, but the one before that, I think. And it was one of the last calls too, if I remember correctly. So
I think probably a person who identifies as... Sorry, go ahead, Tayana.
No, I said I'm going to try to find that episode to listen to.
Okay. So I will say, I think it's interesting trigender because, like, I mean, I'm more familiar with it in the terms of like bigender, like, and I have seen that before where someone's like, I identify as a man and a woman, and you could view that as like a type of gender fluidity, like the concept of some people feel like I feel like a man today, but I might feel like a woman tomorrow. And maybe on the third day I'll feel... Yeah, but I think that's just like somebody who feels the tension of embodying both at the same time, which like obviously that sounds strange to people who only embody one at a given time. But like I imagine that them coming to the conclusion that they embody two what feel like opposite things at the same time, like that probably is kind of a strange experience to have. And I think that it's worthy to mention in this context that there are people who have dissociative identity disorder who have like more than one personality in their brain. And so I have met individuals who are like, yes, some of us are non-binary. One of us identifies very strongly as a female and one of us identifies very strongly as a male. And like, that is a psychological reality that some people have. And, you know, that might not be every person who identifies as bigender or trigender, but I think that it's like worthy to mention that like the human experience is very complex and multifaceted. And whether it's a person who has the ID or whether it's a person who is just one person in their brain, like who just happens to be experiencing something that has like a lot of tension in opposition in that experience, like fundamentally, again, like you said, like it doesn't matter to us, you know, we can honor their pronouns or call them whatever name and it doesn't ultimately matter, but like sometimes you just won't be able to understand what is going on in someone else's head. Like I am so profoundly singular. Like I didn't even have the whole imaginary friend thing when I was a kid. I tried to and I was like, wow, this is not happening. So I cannot really understand people who have like multiple people inhabiting their brain or like different facets of themselves in their brain, like because I don't have the ID. I don't have that diagnosis. And I don't think I'll ever be able to fully understand what they're going through. And yeah, like you were saying, it doesn't make them any less valid or like less worthy of respect or anything.
I understand what you said, that we don't have to understand, but my brain, I'm the kind of person who likes to learn a lot. I'm very curious, and a lot of subjects are interesting to me, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the topic, whatever the topic is. This is like hot button also here in Croatia, although not as much as in the US. But for me and for my daughter, I'm trying to understand, but also just because I want to learn, I want to understand. This is just how my brain works. So I'll try to listen to that episode Arden mentioned. So maybe I'll try to be able to understand better.
Yeah,
me,
and if you have like more questions,
you
can always call back next time too. Like, I mean, I'm sure we'll be on more in September. So yeah, if you go and you look at that episode and you find that you still have more questions, you're absolutely welcome to call back and keep chatting with us.
Yes, I have questions, but for Dr. Ben, because something medical, I was thinking about if people who are let's say trans women, it's on neural level, on the brain level. So I was thinking in matter of, I'm sorry, I got kind of confused. Let's say heart attack. The trans women have symptoms of male or female heart attacks, because there is a difference. So that popped into my mind worked in very strange way. So but that's a question for Dr. Ben.
Yeah, he will be on a lot more. He's got a lot more time for us, so you'll be able to see him plenty.
Yes. Thank you so much for your patience with my language and my questions and my curiosity.
You are great.
And thank you again for taking my call.
Thank you, Tiana. Yeah. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Tiana, you can speak English better than I can speak any other language. So
yeah, honestly.
No need to apologize for language there. Okay. All right. I guess we'll just keep trucking right along in order then.
Hit the like button. Do it. $5 super chats also. We'll read them at the end.
Yeah. We've got a good flow of super chats coming in. So, you could really make us say some ridiculous stuff, keep us here for longer. Give it a shot. Think about it. All right. Coming up next, we have Caitlin. Pronouns are they, she, her, in Oregon. Wants to know how to best challenge her professors on gender matters. So, Caitlin, you are live on the line. Tell us about your situation.
Hi. So I've been on the show before, and I don't know if I think both of you have talked to me. Anyway, so I'm working on becoming a nurse. I work in the nursing profession as a CNA now, but I'm starting in 4 weeks my first prerequisite classes, and I remember having this issue with my CNA class, although it's a slightly different. There's a lot of variables I'm considering, but where my teacher was not great about the language that she used when talking about sex and gender, and kind of conflating them. Even though, especially being in Oregon, she laid the groundwork for acceptance of LGBT people and all that. And so I wanted to give her constructive criticism and say, hey, when you're talking about this, I think it's more accurate to say people with a penis, or whatever. And she just kind of brushed me off. In a CNA class where it's such a short, condensed thing where we're not really going in depth. I mean, right? It's like in fifth. We always joke about how the right's understanding of sex is like fifth grade level. There's a reason why we only teach that level of depth at fifth grade, because that's really all you need at that point. But it's the way they talk about it is important, where you can acknowledge that this is the model we're using, this is how we're going to talk about it, but you kind of leave the door open to further, detail. Does that make sense? So I'm just wondering how best to, because I feel like I'm going to have to. I mean, it would be amazing if I didn't. That would be great. But I don't know. My CNA teacher was a retired nurse. She was in her 80s. So that might be part of it too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to move to Oregon at some point, which is fun. And I was looking at OHSU recently. So it's you might look at, okay, here's a local hospital that provides care for trans people. And maybe let's look at what their standards of care are and update the CNA class to reflect patients that you're actually going to see. Because I can tell you, I live in Kansas right now. And the clinic that I go to, when I was getting, I got the birth control implant in my arm not too long ago. And she, the nurse, stumbled over her words because she said, these men are making these laws. And then she, took a solid 20 seconds being that is not how I should have said that. And so it's if a clinic in Kansas can be up to date on these things, are we not holding ourselves to a higher standard in Oregon, where we have guaranteed trans healthcare and a hospital that does bottom surgery and top surgery, and people travel here for quality, competent care? I don't know. That would be my angle.
Yeah. I think also, Caitlin, what you're experiencing, I've seen quite often in Lux just froze, I think. Hopefully it gets back soon. Sorry, I'll just try to put a one up and oh, it's back.
I can still hear you.
Okay,
I just
weird.
don't know what's happening.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, what you're talking about, I've seen in like surgery clinics before, and even my my hormone provider is incredible. I love her to death. One of her nurses is a bit of an older woman who works in this clinic helping, like they almost exclusively work with queer people. And I think in her head, she's kind of got this notion of like, well, I've dedicated like, you know, my full-time work to helping queer people, so I know I'm not bigoted, but she still kind of says things that are outdated and old, and I've noticed that things don't really get through to her in that way. And so, yeah, I think it's frustrating. You probably have someone who feels like they have, you know, already proven that they're not a bigot, and that I think these kinds of things make people go on defensive as if you're calling them like a bigot, you know, to sum up their entire character, when you're just trying to point out like, hey, this language is not exactly up to date, and I think it would probably be good for you to consider reframing things in this way. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know if there's some sort of upper body that you can appeal to in your CNA course that might be able to resolve this on maybe like a more systemic level, but yeah, that is a tough situation. I don't know if I have great advice other than to just say, I think it's a ubiquitous problem, and I'm sorry that you're running into it.
Yeah. So systemically, I don't think I'm going to make. I mean, I make a small difference every day just by existing, right? And by speaking up. But with the CNA course, that's already long done. It's only a 2-month thing, and I talked to the there was only like 2 teachers. It was a very small little school thing. They also offered the CNA course I'm going to a community college in town, Lane Community College, and I haven't really decided on the nursing school. I believe OHSU does have a nursing program. So, I mean, and like I said, the biggest difference I think that will hopefully make it not as bad is that the CNA course is very short, 2 months, whereas nursing school is like 2-3 years. So we're going to have a whole, class dedicated to human anatomy and physiology and all these things. But I know when we get, like Arden, when you said, people are get defensive because they say they're already, they know that they're not a bigot. I think sometimes also it's because they think, oh, well, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect to an extent. Like, well, oh, I know, I'm an expert in this. I've been doing this for 10, 15 years. And, your mind gets ossified where you don't like, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen to me, because just because I know what I know about sex and gender, I also want to be open-minded, I've recently my identity's recently been in, not crisis, but the caller before about neopronouns and neogenders. I recently went down a rabbit hole about the Galactian alignment system. That's interesting. And that's partially why I've been going by Faye. And so if it's okay, can I talk a little bit about that? No, it's off topic, but.
Sure. I didn't know what words you just said, so if you want to dive into it, that'd be great, because I don't know what you're talking about. So
yeah, so well, the previous caller from Croatia, Tanya, I think it was, she was talking about neopronouns and multigender, and Alexander mentioned people systems and with CID. What was I going to say? Oh, so in my experience, anyway, with Faye, the pronoun Faye, that neopronoun, it's Luxander was really accurate. I think, at least that's true for me. That for me, it's kind of a way to express my. So I'm still trans femme, but it's a way for me to, also kind of show my queerness, right? But express my femininity more specifically, because like you both said, gender is very vague and not very concise. It's different everywhere, and so so specifically with Faye, like I love fantasy and, the fae. And so that's when I saw that, I'm like, oh, then that actually, and it actually sounds like it could work as a pronoun, fae, fair. But I don't know if that hopefully gave any clarity.
Yeah.
Insight.
Not to be the binary trans person chiming in on this. No, I fae, fair, and zizir are some of the neo pronouns that my brain is like, that feels like a pronoun to me. Like,
right.
Not that my opinion and what feels like it works for me matters at all, but those are the ones that I feel like my brain was like, oh yeah, okay, that actually sounds like a pronoun. Again, the way Lux described that with the, I can't remember what the gender identity was. It was a couple episodes ago, but it was just really good. It made me think like, oh yeah, no, that totally makes sense to me. Like feeling a rejection of kind of like, I don't know, maybe the system entirely and kind of wanting to like have a way to express that. That's not you like literally claiming to be a fairy or a fae creature of some kind. Like, because that is how it gets misrepresented on Twitter all the time, right?
Yep.
Thank God I'm not on Twitter anymore.
But
like people would always be like, oh, this deer gender person thinks they're a deer, so we shouldn't listen to anything they have to say. And it's like, but do they really think they're a deer? Like, probably not. I don't think
the cats and the litter boxes in classrooms and stuff, like that doesn't...
Yeah.
I mentioned the Galactian alignment system. I don't even remember how I came across it, but it's a different non-binary system that I was reading about it on, I don't know, some fandom wiki or something. And a lot of it was going over my head, but some of it I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I mean, it reminded me of like Greek and Roman mythology. It was just a lot of it Galactian, right? So it was more about the stars and stuff. And so like you both said, just identifying with these things and feeling an affinity towards them leads you to identify, just like you identify with other women, other females, and you have affinity towards those stereotypical things. These are other genders that society hasn't really explored as much until recently. And so we're kind of making up as we go. And since we blew the cap on it, and now everyone can explore and have their own genders essentially, which is it's interesting because my partner uses a neopronoun. It's Vaughn, which is apparently still used in like Scotland as a gender neutral pronoun, and it was used in English like a couple hundred years ago by some linguist author. But yeah.
So just from a Google search, I'm now understanding what the Galactian alignment system is. It's just like kind of like a way of categorizing non-binary genders and neo genders right?
There was a couple different ones that were really similar, that were related, but they were different. Like one of them had to do with elements, and so yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that more. So thanks for bringing that to my attention, because I've never
more
heard
language.
That.
I think it's just more language to help describe people's experiences. That's all it is, right? Because we know that gender is a social construct. Like like sex and species, like trees. The categorization of it and the way that we define it is socially constructed, but like those things exist. But so anyway, so it's going back to nursing. Like I said, I'm hopeful being in Oregon, and the fact that it is much more in depth. I really like the idea though you said about going above the person, and hopefully that might help. So, and actually right now I'm on online. I'll be doing online, so probably won't come up as much.
That's nice.
Yeah, it'll be hard for it to come up that way. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll just be like a textbook or something, It's when people start talking and then they, all of us, we're all imperfect, to the previous caller's point, and like you mentioned about people that know they're not bigots but get defensive. Like, we all make mistakes and we can be imperfect. Like, just because we're allies doesn't mean that we're going to do everything right, every single time.
Oh, yeah. Chat can tell you, Chat has been mad at me on several occasions where we have been at odds over something. And in some cases, I've moved on my position on those, and others I haven't. But like, Lux and I were talking before the show that one of my anxieties about hosting shows like this is when we're talking about information and facts and claims, like, that that feels like a big burden, and I'm always paranoid about, making a mistake or saying something wrong, and it shouldn't be a big deal, because you can just say like, oh, I was mistaken here or there, or like, this is, how I moved in that position or whatever. But the internet's forever, and, for all of time now, people can go back to the video where I said the wrong thing and be like, oh, this must be Arden's position. And so, it shouldn't be a problem to be wrong, like that, but I agree, like, we're all imperfect and we're all going to make mistakes here and there. And, it's about trying to be open and listening to what people have to say, and trying to, take the best version of what they're saying, and not like strawman it and be like, this person's claiming to be a deer.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for both of your insight.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks for calling.
I'll update you when I officially start, maybe.
Yeah, please do. Have a nice day, Caitlin.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So many non-binary calls today.
I know. I think they're
just like, get out of here, Arden. You don't have anything to say here. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Well, yeah, it's one of those things, because like when we're hosting, like there's a part of needing to butt in is also part of keeping the flow of conversation going. It's not always about necessarily getting my point across. It is a weird balance. I've also have experienced this on Chewed Gum, where, we're talking about issues that affect people with like uteruses and wombs. And I'm like, I have my thoughts. I want to be a good host in performing the show, but also I want to like keep my fucking mouth shut on areas where like, it'd be more important to hear from this person on this issue. It'd be more important to hear from this person on this issue. It is a weird kind of a balance to walk. Also, we want to do better with representation on these shows, since that is like a big kind of part of what we're doing here. So anyway.
Trying our best, okay?
Trying our best, please. Be nice. Don't cancel me. Okay, up next, we have our favorite return caller, big fan of the show, trans advocate extraordinaire, Matthew from Ohio. Pronouns are he, him. Matthew, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Pretty good. What do you want to talk about today?
Good. So, I had questions on the last show, and it got a little bit, I guess, heated or spicy, or however you guys say it. And Luxander kind of challenged me to talk more about the slippery slope quote. So I kind of wanted to just kind of take a stab at that and explain kind of where my mindset is on those things. And for me, it seems like we're already slipping down the slope, but I'm kind of want to talk more about the bottom of that, and without being too apocalyptic, if that all makes sense.
Go for it.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Go for it.
So what I'm noticing now is so just for context sake, I am a Christian, so I do hope to express this with compassion. So please try to hear the best version of myself when I'm saying this. But I'm noticing a lot of people that are on the left side of things. They're kind of getting frustrated with this whole transgender ideology. And what I see at the bottom of the slope is there are going to be people that are just going to say, look, we're done with this. We gave you all this inch, and we gave you all this stuff, and now it's just too much. There's too much bullying. This person's getting canceled. I got to say this. I don't know how to do this pronoun. I don't know how to say that pronoun. I'm just done with it. And for us, it's a delusion, and we're just not going to be part of it anymore. And it's just too much. There are even books being written about it being a delusion. I'm under the impression that it's a delusion. I don't mean that in any negative sense, if that makes sense. So people are just going to be like, look, we're done with this whole thing, and we're moving on. But what's left behind is there's a whole bunch of packages that came in. So imagine you're in one of those places that have like how the government gives people packages on how to be more inclusive or whatever. And so now you have all this stuff. You have all these flyers. You have all this paperwork that's basically useless. And not only that, you're left with, as a trans person who's maybe a male who transitioned, or you transition and you basically destroyed your body, and now it's just like a whole another psychological thing where no one's really accepting it. This is not what we want. And so it's just like, how do I deal with that? And like I said, I'm not trying to sound too apocalyptic here, but that's kind of the bottom of the slope.
The bottom of the slope is that society is going to become more transphobic. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
I don't mind using that word, transphobic. I would consider myself transphobic in the thing like hydrophobic. I consider myself transphobic in that sense. That's how I use transphobic.
That's at least an honest
so basically.
trail of that. Yeah, I mean, I have lots of thoughts. Lux, do you want to jump in? Like,
Arden, you hardly ever get to talk to Matthew. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the notion that you're seeing some people on the left who are frustrated and, as you put it, just done with trans ideology. There's too much bullying. I don't get these pronouns. I don't get how to respect these people. It's a delusion. So first, I'm not really seeing any significant faction on the left doing that. I do see people on social media from time to time get up in a frenzy, but welcome to social media. You can find anyone who thinks anything. We already know that there are foreign operatives who start shit like this to, try to fan flames on election situations. So I don't really put a lot of stock in what I see people saying on social media. In my experience, overwhelmingly, even right-leaning people seem to be, well, they may have problems with trans, as you would put, trans ideology. When they meet an individual trans person, they usually are like, oh, wow, I actually like that person. And they're just the exception to all the things that I think about trans people. But even just a historical lens. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make it clear. I don't dislike you guys at all. I'm right-leaning Christian, hardcore Christian. I don't dislike you guys at all. It's just that I see that to me, it doesn't work in my mind. I've tried.
Well, that's
I've
just
looked into
wrong.
it. Like I said, from a place of compassion.
That's wrong from a data standpoint. It's wrong from a personal standpoint. So that's just wrong. It doesn't work.
Well, look at somebody like, for example, Richard Dawkins, Bill Maher. These people were very in the Skeptic, especially in the beginning of this new atheism. They were very, very good thought leaders in that space. And now even them, they're like, no, this is just ridiculous. This is the delusion.
Do you actually think they were good thought leaders? Or do you think just because they push back on typical leftist positions that you think they're good thought leaders?
No. I mean, in the beginning, they were good thought leaders. Now, I'm sure they're blacklisted.
Right. But you were a Christian.
Matthew,
my point is that you are a Christian. Yeah. They've been advocating for atheism against Christianity. Richard Dawkins even kind of argues a little bit like an anti-theist. So do you actually think they were good thought leaders? Or are you saying from the perspectives of atheists, they were generally accepted as good thought leaders? I'm trying to understand.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So, I mean,
ladder.
Richard Dawkins lost credibility long before the trans issue. If you ever look up Elevator Gate, Richard Dawkins has gotten a lot of flack in the atheist community for being a bit of an old man with kind of old man bigoted views. But just from a historical lens, kind of going back to the core crux of the conversation, of people just getting frustrated and abandoning the left over the trans issue, this happened with the Gay Liberation Front. This has been happening as long as queer people, as long as minorities have been advocating for their rights. There has always been a group in the hegemonic class who would ostensibly, the party that would ostensibly accept them or advocate for their rights, who have been like, well, now it's going too far and I am putting my foot down. This has always been a thing. But overwhelmingly, we're not seeing that become such a significant faction that it's hurting the trans movement. And again, you are just factually wrong on whether it works. Transition overwhelmingly improves people's quality of life. Hold on. Transition overwhelmingly improves people's quality of life. The regret rates of transition surgeries and transition generally is extraordinarily low, especially when compared to many other non-controversial medical interventions. Transition is good for trans people, and yeah, you're just factually wrong about that part. So I don't know, Lux, do you have thoughts you want to jump in on all this?
I mean, the original thing, the reason why I wanted to talk about this whole slippery slope thing, Matthew, is that you seem to intimate some sense of doom around if we were to accept the premise that trans people, that a trans woman is a woman, even though you would normally define a woman as a person who can pop babies out of their body, I guess. I'm I'm not really sure, like, if this is, I mean, this is not the answer that I was expecting you to give, because like this is not like, this does not tell us like what the bad thing about society would be if we were to accept that premise. What you're saying right now is like that there could be a conservative backlash to trans acceptance, which we are currently already seeing. So like what's the bad thing that you're afraid of happening if you were to accept the premise that a trans woman is a woman? Like that's kind of what I wanted to get at here.
Yeah. I really want to tackle that, but just real quick before I do, I wanted to respond a little bit with Arden too about how even the UK is kind of halting this gender affirming care for and I play that
based off of a widely discredited report by a explicitly transphobic person. Like Dr. Cass was supposed to be impartial, but she was telling her colleagues like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're letting children do this. Oh, and have you heard of this book called Irreversible Damage? Like, don't bring the UK and the Cass report into this, because it has been broadly discredited as like an ideologically motivated transphobic attempt to strip trans people of their rights.
Yeah.
Like just because you happen to agree with that conservative backlash doesn't mean that it's okay.
Does it mean they're wrong?
No, so it was complete. The entire report. It's when you take like a bunch of different studies and then you compile them into a report. That's what the Cass review is. But they explicitly did not have anyone who was an expert in the field working on it. They ignored any data that supported the idea that trans people should get medical care. And the person who wrote the report is known to be anti-trans. So you can't use that as data because like that's extremely biased data. It ignored all of the data that
it's personal, or are they anti-trans because they don't see it works?
They're anti-trans because she started from the position that, oh my God, I can't believe they let kids do this. So then she only selected data that supported her original opinion. That is not skepticism. That is not science. That is not a valid excuse to deny trans people access to care. So let's leave the UK out of this. What is the bad thing that you're afraid of happening if we accept that trans people are their gender and that they should, and that they are going to get medical care? Like, what's the bad thing that's going to happen if we say trans women are women?
Right. So the bad thing, like I said, is going to happen is we're going to be left with, for example, somebody like Arden, for example, or even yourself. You've done already some damage to your body, and now people are not accepting this anymore, and people are getting sick of it. They're done with it. So now
this is not answering the question.
And I'm not.
Matthew, that's not the answer to the question.
Matthew, you literally said you're gonna have people like Arden and you. What does that fucking mean? I'm happy in my body. My body is significantly preferable to me than it was before. I have like virtually no problems in like the spaces where I have colleagues in like the reptile community. Like there's literally, you are inventing a problem that doesn't exist. Like, can you actually answer the question and point to a real problem?
But I think for me, the problem is that when you're left with all people not accept, because I'm sure you're hoping that things get better for the trans ideology, for lack of a better term. I'm sure you're hoping that things get better, that people are more accepting, correct?
They are statistically more accepting, even Republicans and Christians.
And this is why we were talking about a slippery slope. It looks like that right now, but what I also see is, I think the pushback is going to be stronger than you think, is what I'm saying. Like I said, I'm not trying to sound
people have been saying that for decades. Literally, people have been saying this for decades. Oh, one day, it's all going to be really bad, and we're going to look back and regret this. One day, everyone is going to detransition, and they're all going to regret it. We're all going to know what an atrocity is. One day, this will all happen. Well, one day has passed like 365 times 10 times 10 times over. Like, when is it actually going to happen? And when is it just going to stop be people like you fear-mongering over this issue? Because, you're bringing nothing. You're saying, well, people might be really upset about it, and then you're going to be there with your surgically altered body, and what are you going to do about it? Like, you're creating a world and a fear and a fiction that doesn't exist. Like, what is the actual harm to people being trans, following the medical guidelines, transitioning, and making a better life for themselves? What is the actual problem with that?
I just don't think it's healthy to for society in general to accept it. I think it's delusional. Like I said,
Matthew, that's just a claim. That doesn't answer my question. I asked you, why is it bad? You saying, I don't like it, it's bad, is not telling me why it's bad. Answer why it's bad. Please.
Yeah. Do you think it's good for a society to
no, Matthew, Matthew, answer my question. Yeah. Why is it bad? Why is it bad doesn't need another question back. Yeah. You should say it's bad because X.
Fair enough. Delusions are bad because they destroy society.
Great. So being trans is not a delusion by any medical sense.
We've studied this. We've tried to treat trans. Hold on, Matthew, really quick. We have done this where we've tried to treat trans people like they're delusional, and we give them antipsychotic medications, and we make them go to therapy, and we try to get them to accept how they truly are, how they were born. It doesn't work. It creates more psychological damage to do that. We found that the treatment for what you call delusion, which is just diagnostically, it's called gender dysphoria, the incongruence between your external and internal state. The treatment for that is transition. The treatment for that is not the treatments that you give people who are delusional. Being trans is not a delusion, according to like 50 or 60, maybe even 70 years of like consistent review and consistent like psychiatric involvement. So I don't really know where you get off asserting that it's delusional.
Well, I understand what you're saying. When I was in school, they taught us the only thing is transition. That's the only way you can take care of these people and whatnot. But
because we tried all these other things.
And I know,
okay, you can say you don't think that's the case. You're wrong. You are going against almost 100 years of data. We have tried to treat trans people like we treat people with genuine delusions. Being trans is not a delusion. You have an ideological belief because of your Christian delusion that has no bearing on actual like facts and data.
So many of the young people that do are left to themselves and not given puberty blockers. Actually, they grow out of it, or some.
No, this is Matthew. You've consumed propaganda. That study was conducted by Ken Zucker from the only institute that performed gender identity care in Canada for decades, and he has been thoroughly discredited for that process for a number of reasons. One, people who didn't return to the clinic were counted as desisted when they had no evidence to make that assumption. Secondly, people in that study were being trans was operationally defined in a way that anybody who attended that clinic who presented with gender aberrant behavior would be considered trans. So if a little boy came in and picked up a Barbie, holy shit, that kid's fucking trans, when obviously that's not how we define being trans in any way, shape, or form nowadays. He was discredited by the clinic that he worked for, who said he is doing things out of step with the data and the current modern sense of what we know is good for these people. So this is propaganda. Trans people don't the majority of the time desist.
At the very least, if you see two ideologies going against one another, and one is saying this is not how you do it, and the other one is saying no, this is how you do it, but the louder voice is saying, hey, look, no, this is how it's done. And this
yes,
is how
Matthew, there's two ideologies. And in Nazi Germany in the 1940s, there was two ideologies. One that said Jews are poisoning the blood of the German people, and one that said they weren't. So fucking what? Mm-hmm. Sometimes two ideologies are different, and one is right and the other's wrong.
Right, and I'm saying the loud ideology is not always the right one. Would you agree with that?
I agree. So can you present some fucking evidence to back up your point, or are you just going to keep asserting that you don't like it? You're worried about how bad it could be. Can you actually bring up some evidence that points to why this is a problem, or are you going to keep beating around the bush and talking about your feels?
So you don't consider children being left to themselves. I know you said because the other guy did this thing. You don't consider that evidence, even though it happened. You don't consider that evidence.
So the fact is that you're bringing up a discredited study. Like when you look at a study, you have to look at what were the parameters, who conducted the study, what were their biases, who paid for the study, and that study, the 80% one that you cite, like for all the reasons Arden already said, that is not. You cannot draw upon that as though that's like reliable data, because it's not reliable data. Now, and like that's like completely putting aside the fact that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with the opposite side of that study now, it's saying that kids who are put on puberty blockers are less likely to desist because it's just kind of leads them to not desist.
It's because
Matthew.
there's like a significant rigorous process that you put these children through, and it's only the ones that are like 120% for sure, guaranteed trans, definitely for sure, absolutely. Only those kids get to have puberty blockers in the first place, when we should be viewing puberty pausing medication as an opportunity to go through the diagnostic process. So like, if we allowed the ones who are like maybe only 90% or maybe only 70% sure that this kid is trans, if we let those kids go on puberty pausing medication in order to pause those changes to go through the diagnostic process, maybe we would see more children go on puberty pausing medication and then come back off of it. But we have such a extremely high bar. Like, this is what Josie and I were trying to tell you before, is like, you have to be consistent, persistent, and insistent for like 5 years at least before they'll let you even have a pause to the irreversible puberty that your body is going through naturally.
Yeah, and I hear you on that, because that's what we're taught, right? We're taught, hey, it's a long process and all this stuff. But on the other side, speaking of two ideologies, the other side says, hey, look, you want to fast track this, mention self-deletion. If somebody's going to self-delete, then hey, that's the fast track to get into, like, that's like
not
the
how that works,
secret
Matthew.
of the trade, right?
Matthew, you were demonstrating live on air that you deep throat anti-trans propaganda. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, you keep citing these things when you have no evidence for them. If you actually think that's the case, bring some real evidence of it happening, and not some bullshit that's been completely discredited by like the organizations who originally funded the studies.
But Arden, you have to remember, we're talking about two ideologies going against one another. And
no, we're not. We're talking about data.
Not always the right one.
Data, Matthew. Like, the position that we hold. Okay, Arden and I are not just atheists. We are skeptics. We care about the data. If there was data that showed that trans people were delusional, we would be like, okay, yeah, it's a delusion that happens to be best treated by transition or whatever. But that's not the case. We don't see data that indicates that people who identify as trans when they were younger grow out of it later. Like, we actually care about the process of evidence. The idea that trans people are who we identify as, it is not an ideological position. You are taking your ideological position of traditional Christianity, whatever, and imposing it onto the scientific process. And that's not how this works. You are doing, it's called an ad hoc. You were writing the conclusion at the bottom of the page, and then you're going to the top of the blank page, and you're writing a bunch of reasons why your conclusion is correct without going through the process of actually coming to know the truth with facts and data and testing and peer review. Like, that's why this is so frustrating, because you keep just saying like, I feel like it's going to be like this, but we aren't arguing from our feelings. We're arguing from facts and data and decades upon decades of research.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm a Christian. What about Richard Dawkins, someone who's not a Christian? Who is he? Would you consider him a skeptic?
Not on this
really.
issue.
Okay, and why is that?
Because he believes things uncritically. He has hosted several gender-critical people on his podcast and just accepted the things that they've said without asking any follow-up questions or digging into it at all. He has cited irreversible damage, which was also the core foundation of irreversible damage, was a study that was also completely discredited because they sourced their participants from websites and forums that were geared towards parents of transgender kids who did not accept their transgender kids. This study was discredited by the journal that published it, and Richard Dawkins accepted it, hasn't looked into it, hasn't said anything about it since he promoted that. Also, he promoted the complete lie that Iman Khalif was intersex and had XY chromosomes. He has no reason to believe that. He's just making assumptions because the fucking like discredited Russian boxing outlet that the IOC doesn't accept anymore at one point said she failed a test under dubious conditions. Richard Dawkins has done great stuff for evolution, and he's done great stuff for atheist activism, but he is not a skeptic on everything. He's not a good thinker on everything, and he has demonstrated on this issue he is not a skeptic. So just citing, oh, well, some atheists don't like trans people isn't convincing to me. Bring me some information.
That's fine. Well,
this is an appeal to authority fallacy.
When you're a skeptic, are you a skeptic on everything, or are there some things you're not a skeptic on, and there are some things you are a skeptic on?
Skepticism applies to everything.
Well, okay, I heard two things. So who said what?
Yes, we both said yes.
Yes.
Skepticism relies on what?
You are looking for the data on every position that you hold. Like, to be consistent as a skeptic, and now we all have biases, and sometimes,
I agree
yes,
with that, yeah.
people don't always apply the skepticism to everything. Like, I'm so disappointed in how many alleged skeptics I know who are just raw dogging the air every day right now during like one of the biggest summer waves of a huge pandemic. But like, yeah, the idea in order to be consistent as a skeptic is that every position that you hold is based on, or at least can be influenced by, the data. So maybe originally my belief is something that my aunt told me when I was 6, but like if I come into my adulthood, continuing to believe something false is contrary to my values and ethics as a skeptic. Like, to me, it's all about the data. It's all about the research, as much research as available, and checking and making sure that that is reliable, and who decided to do the study, and like what studies did they even look at to create the metadata. Like, yeah, that's what being a skeptic means. Every one of your positions is based on or heavily influenced by the actual information that we have available to us, which is why I don't believe that you are a skeptic, Matthew.
Not at all.
That's fine. Well, all right. Well, okay. So I really want to. I mean, I kind of want to dig on the pandemic thing, but I'm going to leave that alone. But
yeah,
I really want to understand where you guys are coming from, and maybe maybe you guys are saying that I'm getting into the propaganda, and I receive the propaganda. It seems to me like the quote propaganda. I'm just saying quote for now because I don't see it as propaganda at the moment. Seems to kind of align with what I understand, right? So I'm willing to do more research on the whole thing, and just really, and I appreciate that we're having this conversation, because I would really be willing to do a deep dive on it. My kind of caution, I guess, I wouldn't say fear, but my kind of caution is that every time I try to get into these spaces, and you guys have let me kind of come into the space, which I really appreciate, is this idea of like, why are you here? What are you looking for? Why are you trying to find more about this? You know, and it's just like, I just want to know more. I want to be compassionate. Like, even for me, I was convinced by like I told you before, the whole they them thing. I was just like, why would you call someone they? That's just multiple people. Someone was like, their keys, that's one person. And I'm like, no, that's fair. I would refer to someone as they, them. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want I have to also balance my compassion with reason at the same time. There's a Bible kind of biblical idea where it says you want to have virtue with knowledge, and so I'm trying to add knowledge onto my virtue. So I'm guessing I have to add more knowledge, and I'm willing to look more into it. But it's just right now, as I see, it doesn't seem like propaganda to me. I'm not saying you guys are wrong, but the good news for me is that, okay, if this is propaganda, let me look more into it and get more data, get more information. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, I'll call back to you. I probably won't call back next time, but maybe a couple of weeks later, after I kind of bury myself in a hole of all of this and really uncovering things, then we can have another conversation, which I appreciate you guys even letting me to take a deep breath this long on a call show like this. So I really appreciate that.
It's all right, Matthew. I'll give you credit where credit's due. I feel like usually you answer direct questions, which is more than I can get from a lot of people coming from your position. And that's why we've kept letting you come back, because you will usually at least engage in a conversation, even if it feels like it's a difficult thing when we're running a show like this. If people repeatedly call in and they don't really seem to be accepting and integrating new information or letting that modify their position at all. And I'm not meaning that you have to become accepting of trans people or a trans advocate, but it does seem like you've actually adapted to some of the information you've gotten. And that's why, again, we've been open to letting you keep coming back. But I will tell you, it is very frustrating because every time you come back, we get a lot of the same kind of arguments. And I think I would just push you to look into the medical consensus. I mean, overwhelmingly, every major medical organization in the United States, even the British Medical Association, has discredited the CAST study. Every major medical organization in the United States endorses trans healthcare at, age appropriate, of course, for all people to whom it would apply. And I would ask, why do you think it's the case that overwhelmingly these associations of many doctors who are more informed on these issues than you or I or Lux or anyone watching this show most likely is on these issues, why is it that they have overwhelmingly come to the conclusion that being trans is fine and that transition care overwhelmingly improves our quality of life? Why do you think they've come to that conclusion and you, who hasn't read as much information, have come to a different conclusion? Wouldn't it stand to reason that probably, and this isn't an appeal to authority, by the way, because I'm appealing to the information that has informed their opinion. Don't you think it's a little suspicious?
I have an answer, by the way.
Sure, I'll let you do it just a second. Don't you think it's a little weird that these professionals are overwhelmingly in some position? Like, the only counter to that you could possibly give is that you have some information they don't have, or that there is some sort of conspiracy of like multi-level ideological capture that is so deep that not a single person has broken from it. Like, to like call out the conspiratorial nature of it, that is highly suspect to me, especially in such a charged time that we live today.
Yeah. So, and on 3 occasions, I thought it was 2, but on 3 occasions, including the pandemic, I find myself just working or involving myself in areas where I'm kind of up face front with it, with the educational system, with the medical system. And when I find that I'm like, when I find that I'm in that, like when I went to school for social work, a lot of this was, they give you the DSM-5 and they're like, transitioning is the only way to do it. And then if you kind of question, they give you a hard time and you can't really question. So there's a lot of suppression of questioning and information. And even with the pandemic thing, I was at a hospital and it's just like, you don't really have to wear a mask, just wear it for their sake. And it's just like, all you got to do is say this and you don't need to get vaccinated. So you're like, when you're right there in the front of the battlefield, it's kind of hard, I guess, to take a step back and kind of see everything as a whole, maybe. That's me just being fair, I guess, to everything. So maybe I'm too up close and personal to the whole thing, or maybe because I'm up close and personal, that's why I have these ideas. But like I said, I'm willing to bury myself more into this stuff, really look onto the other side more than I probably ever had, look onto to my side as well more than I ever had, and just, like I said, maybe call back in a month or so or whatever, or however long it takes me to kind of and present whatever I have.
If you want to go do like an information dig and try to present like a robust case, I absolutely welcome that. I think that'd be great. That would be a big improvement to the style of calls we've had with you so far, and I would be very much welcome that. I will say, I don't think it has anything to do with you being too close. Of course, medical professionals are going to dissuade you from going against the grain of what the evidence suggests is best for the medical care of individuals. I think the reason you have these feelings is because you are so detached from trans people and the trans experience and what we go through. Even if you're in healthcare, that does not mean that you get trans people or that you understand what we've gone through or that you understand how the medicine affects us. I don't think you being too close to it has anything to do with your position. Quite the opposite, actually. But Lux, do you want to give any closing thoughts before we let Matthew go?
Yeah, I will say, just as a closing remark, if you're going to go do some research, something that is important to do, like something that I've done as a skeptic, is I trend my search terms around the thing that I don't believe. So like, if I believe that trans people are valid, I will search for things that are like, why shouldn't trans people transition? So I think for you, if you really want to get away from, what Arden is calling propaganda, this like, you are getting information that confirms your viewpoint, right? So if you want to break out of that, you need to go seek out information actively that would directly contradict your viewpoint. And then you have to take the info that you already have.
Process here. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to compare these two things. You need to like take the complete opposite thing and compare it against the thing that you already believe and look at, okay, so this study says trans people should transition and the CAS report says they shouldn't. And then like really dig in and compare those two things. But like, you're not going to get out of this if you keep only looking at data that confirms your viewpoint. Even if you think it's super reliable and you think it's super amazing, like that's not going to help you develop as a person and have a balanced opinion, because that's the point of skepticism, is having like a balanced opinion based on the actual like information that's available and not off of like what somebody has told you, basically.
And calling you guys is part of the process as well. I hope you guys know that. You guys are a real help in all of this as well. So don't feel like it's just falling on deaf ears. But I would say, if you can, you don't have to do this. I know people have a little bit of issue with it. If you have anything that you can link in the chat, my wife kind of listens in, and she'll probably can snapshot or something in the chat, a website or something, or a link or something, because I lost my JSTOR's password, right? So I can't really get all the juicy stuff. But
yeah,
there is a. You guys have something.
Yeah, our one of our mods, Clacia, I don't know if she's in chat right now. I don't think she is actually, which is unfortunate. She regularly drops a link to a compilation. It's like a link tree that is a link to a bunch of studies. It's getting more outdated. There are some studies that I don't completely love in it, but you can also look up on Reddit, A Comprehensive Defense of Trans People by Musicotic. It's a Reddit thread that compiles a bunch of studies. Lux just dropped something in the chat too, I see.
It's very comprehensive, so you'll have to search for the trans part of it. But like, yeah, there's a compilation of information in that doc I just posted.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to reel it back. Fantastic. And also, I will say, Matthew, I appreciate you having thick skin, because I know I'm going to go hard, and our audience is going to go hard. And I appreciate that you are willing to tolerate that, to have repeated conversations. So thank you for being willing to engage in spite of hostility from our audience, deserved or otherwise.
No worries.
Mm-hmm. All right. You have a good day, Matthew. We'll talk to you later.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Who's Fraba?
What is that? I don't know that.
It's from Anger Management, the movie with Jack Nicholson. Just like, this is the phrase we use to calm ourselves down.
I am going to close the lines, so I see someone's getting screened right now. That's fine. That means no new callers after that. If you're on the line currently, we will probably be getting to you, but no new callers for the rest of the show. Man, that was a doozy. I have such mixed feelings about Matthew, because we need to have callers who don't agree with us. That's the point of this show. I want people to be able to challenge themselves and have their ideas challenged. And, I don't necessarily think telling Matthew he's deep-throating propaganda is going to be the most compelling to him, but people in the audience who might have heard that, I think it can be more effective on moving them on those issues, and that is really kind of the point of these shows, is moving the audience.
Also entertainment.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everyone gets that to a certain extent, but I stand by it. I mean, I'm not going to deny that I said that or shy away from it, but I acknowledge that it's probably not the most helpful for Matthew as an individual to move him on any of these issues.
For your frame of reference moving forward, Matthew is a personal trainer. That's his profession.
So, right. I was wondering, because it seemed like it was vaguely medical, but I produced last week, so I should have known that, because I think that came up last week. But that actually does not surprise me at all. That kind of confirms perhaps my prejudices about Matthew based on the conversations we've had with him. Anyway.
Yeah. It's a like button if you enjoyed that spicy conversation where we got to yell at someone. It was fun.
It was fun, actually. Matthew's a real good sport for that stuff. So I give him credit where it's due, although it's not very much. All right. Let's get to our next call. Let's work through these last 4 callers. We're going to take Chase first in California. Pronouns are they, them. How to talk about sexy bits preferences for non-binary people. A lot of non-binary calls today. So, Chase, you are live. Talk to us about what's going on.
Hi. Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
So good.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
Good. Sorry, there's a delay. I know there is, but I still fell for it.
Sorry.
Yeah, the delay.
Yeah. Well, first off, I wanted to just give a little update. I called in to the show, I want to say almost like 2 months ago now. Maybe it's been 2 months. And I talked to you, Lux, and Josie. And that was the first time that I used they, them pronouns. I kind of just felt it out on the show. And I've been going full board. I've come out, and I love it. And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for all you do. I'm sure you hear it all the time, but I just wanted to say that first.
Thanks.
That's cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. With that being said, I just have had this thought in the back of my head. I'm in a committed relationship, and it doesn't matter for me, but it's something I've been trying to process of if I was in the dating realm, and I was with talking to a non-binary person, like I wouldn't want someone to just be out of nowhere like, hey, do you have a penis? But at the same time, preferences are real. And for me, I'm not attracted to penises. So, how would someone go about it?
I've been in a monogamous relationship for a while, so I mean, I have my ideas, but I don't know. Arden, do you have like some hands-on experience with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's really a right way to handle this. I think generally honesty is preferable. I think people like being, informed of the conversation, but I also think it's unrealistic to expect trans people to need to, detail what their genitals are like before the first date happens. I think that would be weirder than being like, let's have a date, let's have a conversation, let's get to know each other. And if things seem cool, then we can start opening up to those sorts of things. I understand why people might want that information, but you're not entitled to it is the thing. And I think just like people who, might be infertile or whatever, who are like cis het, they're probably not going to bring that up on the first date because they don't really know you yet. And you're not entitled to that information, even if you might like to know. I think generally if you get through a first date and the vibes are good, you feel like you both like each other's company and you're kind of more or less on the same page as far as you can tell so far, I think it would be a good opportunity to be like, hey, before we continue, I just wanted to like have this discussion with you to get this information so that you can like, make an informed choice when we're, trying to discuss boundaries or interests or whatever. I think those kind of conversations are fine. Although I have found when I've done that, it seems jarring to people, which is ironic because people are always begging trans people to tell everyone as soon as possible. But when you do that, they seem to not react as well to it as if they had had a little bit more time to process and get to know you as a person first. So I don't know. There's no perfect way to do it. I think the only area where I have concern is where somebody explicitly says, like, I don't like to date people with penises, or I wouldn't want to date a trans person, and if I knew they were trans, I would not date them, and then you don't tell them. That's where it starts to kind of get into like maybe a little bit of lying. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary is my long answer.
I feel like we can make it fun. Okay. Like you can, okay, it's kind of like I say about pronouns, like you could start a conversation about something else that alludes to this. If you're like, hey, so this is getting kind of flirty and I really like this, like, and then you can be like, okay, what do you like? And that could be like an indirect way of getting them to talk about like, okay, they can say whether they're a top or a bottom, or like they do or don't want to be touched, because like, there's like this preference thing, but like the context of a penis is different when there's a woman around it, and maybe it behaves differently, or maybe she doesn't want you to fucking touch it anyway. Like, there's so many different potential answers because every person is so different, like you got to learn the exact stroke pattern or whatever, for each individual person. But I think that, it doesn't need to be this whole like serious, dour kind of, well, just so you know, before we get too far into this relationship, I don't like this or whatever. You can be flirtatious and open and like, treat it like it's a fun exploration, because I kind of feel like that's what dating should be. I haven't done it in a long time, but like, it seems like that's the point of it, is to have fun, and like sex should be fun as well as dating should be fun. So, just try to keep it lighthearted and flirty. And I think that would probably be a better way to go. And like, yeah, if you do have to draw boundaries, sometimes that's going to happen. Sometimes you have to be like, listen, I'll definitely hit it from the back, but if you have a pee-pee, I'm not going from the front. Like, I don't know, man. Like, you got to figure it out person to person.
Yeah.
I think that all makes sense. Being autistic, it's just like I feel like I over communicate often, so or I'm misunderstood in terms of my intentions. So I don't plan on being being out of my relationship or anything, but I'm just trying to think, proactively, as well as like, I know these types of questions are going to come up as I open up to more friends. Especially one friend. I know that I know he's going to ask something like that. So I'm trying to be mentally prepared for how to, engage. But yeah, that all seems fair.
Yeah, I'm sorry it's not like because trust me, I also feel like, with things like this, I feel like I try to be very direct in communication, and in theory, that should be the preference, but in actuality, it doesn't always go over as well with people when you're like super direct with these sorts of things. So I do think it's hard to give like specific advice on this. Like all I can say is very much, don't stress about feeling like you're hiding something if you don't explain it all right away. Like, I think it's totally fair to want to get comfortable with someone before you start explaining to them what your genitals look like and how they like to be touched.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, that was helpful. With that being said, can I ask something else in a different but similar realm?
Yeah, go for it.
Because Lux said something about it's similar to how you described like coming out as non-binary. But what I've been like trying to figure out is since I've come out, like I told everyone maybe once, maybe twice at most, who I have communicated to. But when they do misgender me, I don't think I've ever really said anything except for maybe to my mom one time. But I don't want to be obnoxious, but I also don't want to be so passive as to, allow a habit to continue. And do you have any advice on how to navigate that as someone who's just coming out?
I mean, you will kind of have to be obnoxious, I think, a little bit. And, you'll have to come up with your different approach for each person. Like, if you just gently just say, they, and then you move on. Or like, if it is repeated, you might have to be like, look, I understand that this is a process for you, but it's really important that I see you trying. Like, I want to see you catching yourself when you do it wrong. I don't want you to make a big deal and prostrate yourself and go, oh my God, I'm so sorry or whatever. Like, I just need to see that you care and you're trying and you're being considerate. Because that's ultimately what it is. Like, you want your loved ones to be considerate and respectful for you. So, it might be that you feel like you're being obnoxious, but that's what holding boundaries is. Sometimes when you're holding boundaries, people think you're a raging bitch. And like, it's just part of like life and enforcing your boundaries, and that there are going to be people who just blow you off. And that's a data point for you to collect on whether you really want to spend much time around them. I'm not saying cut people off, but it's like, yeah, how much time am I willing to give to someone who is not willing to respect me? Yeah. And I think that gentle reminders are probably the best thing. Reminding them that you love them and you care about them, and like that this is a way that they can show you that they love and care about you as well. And maybe, I need to at least see you trying. I don't feel very cared for if I'm not seeing at least some amount of effort. Like, I need you to notice that this is an important part of my life now. All that said, I have given up. So I'm just like, all right, whatever. It doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Yeah, I totally get that. Another thing I have, like, when it comes to that, I still have a handful of friends from we can call it a church that I was in that somehow still talk to me, even though they're not allowed to religiously. And like, a lot of them I don't even want to come out to because I feel like I'm giving credence to them. Like my birth parents, when I left the church, one of the things my mom said was, because I was very concerned about like LGBTQ rights and stuff like that, and the church's stance on it. And I expressed that, and they're like, my mom's like, oh, so what, are you going to go be gay now? I was like, no, because I'm not attracted to men. But if I was, I don't see the issue with it. But like, this is going to just like feed into their, I don't know, like almost persecution complex, or like self-fulfilling prophecy to my family as well as like everyone I used to know. And I don't know, like part of me wants to like hide it so I can be more palatable to them, to try to like help them get out of the church, but that's also completely inauthentic, and it's like a horrible battle that just drives me fucking bonkers. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Lux.
Hello. Hi, I'm still here. I promise. I don't know what the problem is. I think I needed my video card to update, and that's what's happening.
Maybe. There's a little stutter.
No.
You're back now.
I can always still hear you. I think I just need to update my video card. No, but like you're gonna have to make those decisions, and it's gonna be a person by person thing. And like, yeah, so sometimes like with my if I'm seeing my grandparents or I'm seeing my like father-in-law, I'm just not trying to be out to them. I'm not like trying to be like not out. I'm not keeping anything secret, but I'm not trying to have this conversation with old people who don't understand. And yeah, like if you want to help get friends out of the church, it might behoove you to like follow that track where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna not share this part of me with you until I feel like you're ready, or like it'll help get you out of this if you're perceiving me as the cisgender person that you originally met, what have you. Yeah, and you're gonna have to come out continuously forever as a non-binary person, like it's never ending. You'll have to come out to the same person more than once. Even binary trans people have to deal with this. You have to come out to the same people. You have to come out to new people. Yeah, like the conversation of dating, like you have to come out to people when you're dating, and you just have to decide for your personal like life and well-being what is worth the effort, because it will get exhausting. If you spend a lot of time doing this, it will become, first of all, you'll build habits and you'll get better at coming out and you'll learn how to do it better. I used to work retail and I would correct people when they used the wrong pronouns, and I don't know why I did that. In retrospect, I'm like, why? Why did I bother with people that I was never going to see again? So yeah, you just kind of have to navigate that and prioritize your well-being and like what's helping you sleep at night. Yeah, I guess that's all.
Okay, cool. That all makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jace.
Hopefully that's helped.
Yeah. Before I go, I just wanted to say, again, like I said, I appreciate the line so much, but I've been listening to the Transatlantic, especially like every time it's out. And I've been able to talk to a couple people using a lot of the points that I've learned from the show. And I've gotten a few people that were not supporting trans rights to completely switch their opinions
Yes.
and come over to our side. And I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so
awesome.
much, Chase. That is like the whole point of this fucking show. So it feels really good to know when that's actually happening.
Love to hear it. Thank you so much.
Whose house I'm at right now changed his mind just a few days ago, and I'm going to share the show with him when I'm done working at his house.
That's great.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Chase. I really appreciate it. You have a lovely day now.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
I love that.
That is great. Real quick before we move on to the last three callers, I want to do a huge shout out to Stephanie Helms for call screening for us today. I know she mentioned she's got at, I think she is military time, but I think it's midnight 0000 UTC.
Yep.
Midnight Central Time over on the Transpositions channel. Stephanie, who's been on this show several times, does stuff there, as well as some other like friends of the show and friends of like trans atheist people. So definitely go check that out later tonight if you are around and available. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm. I might also be on Transpositions. It just depends on what the schedule is for TACUS next month.
Oh, cool. Yes, we are kind of working that. That's why I don't have a TACUS to announce for next week yet, because still collecting availability, but that's because I was behind on asking. I felt so ahead of the game this month. I was like, I've got everything so down pat. I'm like doing great. And then right as I was like, oh shit, I need to get availabilities, Lux messaged the group chat and it was like, are we getting availabilities anytime soon? Yes.
Yeah.
Now.
When's that going to happen? It would be good.
Okay. We have 3 more callers left. So first we're going to talk to Janine. Pronouns are she, her. No location listed. Has a question about sex dysphoria versus gender dysphoria. So Janine, it's kind of a long note. So I just want you to go into what this all means from your perspective. If you're using the web client, which it looks like you are, you might want to tap your phone. We're not hearing you, and sometimes your phone can go to sleep when we're using the web client. So double tap it and then try talking for me.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep, we gotcha.
Yep, gotcha. Okay, good. So yeah, I'm still relatively early in everything. So I'm like coming up on my 1 year in October of medically transitioning, and I feel like I've kind of worked through this, at least like experientially. Like I don't really worry about this type of distinction anymore, but logically I don't really know how to explain it to others, or like one thing my mom often says is, why can't you be a feminine man? And it's like, okay, well, I don't really have a good reason for you, because I think, femboys rock, right? But, it's just not really me. Like, and I do think there's probably a biological element to it, but, it's mainly, I'm just navigating by feelings right now, and I was curious what your guys' thoughts on this was.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts. Lex, do you want to jump in, or?
You can go ahead.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a hard distinction to draw, but I mean, ultimately, being trans, having a trans identity, is about it's about a feeling. It's about the sense of yourself as it relates to your sex and your interaction and how that, plays out in society. It's like that intersection of bio, psycho, social. There's so many things coming together. And that's why it's really difficult to pull apart, like, why exactly is, like you were pointing out, Janine, like a trans woman feeling like a trans woman. And then there are some, femboys who maybe feel like they're strongly identify as men, but they just like to present in a very overtly feminine way. It's really hard to know. There's so many intertwined factors that go into why someone is the way they are, but also people don't spend this much time thinking about that in every other way that plays out in the human experience. Like, I've often used I don't really like ice cream, but for the sake of the analogy, why I like vanilla ice cream and you like chocolate ice cream. Is there probably a reason? Is there probably some sort of combination of like my biology plus some sort of formative memory experience the first time I had ice cream comes together to make me feel convinced that this is my preference over that one? Probably, but there's so many factors that go into tying it down. It's easier to just acknowledge that is your preference of ice cream. That is the flavor that is your favorite. Like, whether, you could be lying about it, but I don't really have any reason to believe that's the case. And it seems silly to spend my days being concerned that every time somebody tells me something about their internal experience that they're lying about it. That'd be an exhausting way to live your life if you're just being endlessly skeptical about every single experience that a person articulates that they have. But of course you leave the room open for, maybe there's something else going on here. And when I see evidence for that, I'll address it then. There's no reason, like, you could be just a feminine man if you wanted to be. That is an option, but you feel, I mean, maybe not, from your call so far, it sounds like you feel like a woman, and that's just a thing that we know happens to some people. Some subset of the population has a deep sense, regardless of their gender expression, you don't even have to be feminine, that, my gender is that of a woman, and there's no, like, I couldn't tell you why. I couldn't, like, justify that in, like, I'm not gonna have a blood test for you to show, see, I got the woman result. It's just a feeling that you get when you spend, years of your life interacting with society and interacting with your family and identifying with different people and different things and kind of seeing how you integrate into the complex web of gender societally. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm kicking off on this. This is where my brain went. Lux, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just, I mean, I am not. Like, why can't you just be a feminine man? Like, because I am not. Like, I don't know why you need more of an explanation than that. Like, I know, of course, like, sometimes our parents are difficult about these things. But, like, at the end of the day, yeah. Like, are you asking a lesbian, like, well, why, if you're attracted to women, why don't you just be a man? Like, that's not how this works. Like,
Right.
yeah, you're attracted to who you're attracted to, and you identify as you identify. Like, yes, of course I know that life would be easier, probably, if I didn't transition. I'm aware of that. But I feel compelled to by some internal compulsion. Like, I desire it, and I desire it enough that I'm going to pursue it. I would rather not live with a half measure where I'm, like, kind of sort of living the life that I want to, but, like, not really. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to deal with parents. It's always so difficult.
No, I don't know if anybody has that one figured out.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Is it's as simple as just preferences, and sure, we could find like the thing if we like had the technology, whatever, like the specific brain or whatever. Well, I mean, maybe not with socio stuff, but yeah, I guess it just feels like it's like stopping asking the question instead of like answering it. Like I don't know, because like it is like a lot of stuff, like you know, like a lot of side effects of like losing the ability to have children, and you know, surgery. I have like a huge fear of like medical stuff, so I'm looking into it, but I'm also worried about that. And yeah, I guess I wish I could answer this even for myself, of like where this is coming from, because I don't want, like, I don't know, like, to feel like the rug gets pulled out underneath of me at some future point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you, Janine. I think it's important to mention, I know I've articulated some effect, and I still think this is kind of true, that, you know, if we had some amazing future technology, we might be able to detect the pattern of brain waves that could be what we would consider your gender identity or something, right? But I think ultimately gender is a lot like consciousness, in the sense that it is, when you are experiencing consciousness, it feels integrated, right? Like everything is happening simultaneously. I'm perceiving the world and making judgments about it all in one fluid motion. But the reality is that you have several different mechanisms taking place in your brain at one time. The mechanism that allows you to reach out and touch something and know what to do with it is completely different from the mechanism in your brain that lets you know what the thing that you are touching is. And there are people who, when you remove certain spots of those brains, can be like, they can pick up a key, put it in a door, but if you ask them what it is, they'll be like, I have no idea. And there are people who have the other situation where, you know, if you pick them up, they can be like, oh, this is a key, this is how you get into a house. But if you try to get them to put it into a lock, they like can't do it. It is an actual thing. I forget what the name for it is. And I think gender is similar in the sense that there are so many factors that go into why we have a sense of our gender identity. But ultimately, finding out why, and I'll tell you because I spent a lot of time also agonizing over this, will not help you to accept or understand yourself better. Because fundamentally, whether or not we find out why, we know this group of people exists. We know a group of people who have this deeply felt experience of not being the gender that they were assigned at birth exists. And we know that making it so they can access, you know, documents that represent who they are fairly, having communities who support and engage with them in a non-discriminatory manner, having access to medical transition if that's what they want. These are the things that improve these people's quality of life. We've tried, as Lux pointed out earlier in the show today, we have tried treating them like they have a delusion. We have tried giving infants surgery on their genitals and just socializing them a certain way to try to force them into a role. We've tried conversion therapy. These things don't work. We don't know why trans people are the way they are, but we do know that they are. And we don't really need anything more than that to know that if you're having a sense that, you know, I'm uncomfortable with like my genitals, or I'm uncomfortable with my facial hair, or I'm uncomfortable with X, Y, and Z part of my body, that as opposed to like body dysmorphia, where we know that changing the external factors doesn't help the internal distress and just reorients the like locus of distress. When it comes to trans people, getting these medical interventions does have a massive impact on improving our quality of life. And sure, for some people, it still doesn't, you know, you're never going to magically cure dysphoria and, you know, go without it. And not everyone even has, you know, dysphoria, or not everyone has curing dysphoria as a goal of theirs. Like, it's such a complex situation. I really do understand and empathize with the desire to understand why and to feel like that's going to give you something. But from my personal experience, I really don't think it does.
Yeah. No, I think that's what I needed to hear. Because I will say, you know, every time I kind of litmus test myself, I'm like, well, would I want to go back? And I'm like, oh, no. So,
yeah.
It's a great way to be sure.
I think I am making the right choices for me. And yeah, you know, and I definitely keep an eye on the data, and I really enjoy you guys, you know, getting all the different experiences from callers. And but yeah, definitely, you're right. It's not worth obsessing over.
Yeah, I don't want to invalidate your feelings because I relate deeply, but I just think it's an effort in futility. It will just frustrate you endlessly if you focus on that.
Yeah. Okay. That was pretty much it for me. I guess the second part I could ask is, what do you think if gender were abolished? What kind of effect do you think that would have on just the larger situation, like in society?
I think that it would just make a lot of stuff that seems really high stakes now completely not high stakes. Like, I think that, you know, in the hypothetical Star Trek future, which is kind of where we tend to go with this hypothetical, like, I think that people would just change their bodies and then that would be it. Like, I do still think that people would change their bodies because, like, you're always going to have something. Like, even if the standard is different, then, yeah, people are going to be like, I'm going to synthetically make myself taller, or I'm going to synthetically, like, change the shape of my jawline or whatever. Like, there's always going to be something, whether it's attached to gender or not. And if gender doesn't matter, then yeah, people are going to change what are associated, like, gendered features, and that it might still have some connotation of gender dysphoria for them, or it might be completely disconnected from that. We can't guess what society is going to be like even 100 years in the future, much less like 1,000 years when we have access to that kind of technology. And like, realistically, gender abolition is like going to take a long time if it ever happens. Yeah, I just think that it's going to be like, man, whatever. It's going to be like, you know, Jack Harkness from Doctor Who, and how he's like, I will stick it in anything that has a suitable hole. Like, it's just going to be a free-for-all.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I hope things, you know, move in that direction of it just not mattering. But all right, well, sure. I'll let you guys move on. Thank you so much for taking my call. Love for the whole staff there. I'm more of a lurker, but, you know, I always I'll try to engage a bit.
Thanks, Janine. We appreciate it. Ya. Lurkers matter too. Hashtag lurkers rights. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Honestly, on the note of like the Star Trek future, while I'm actively denying the furry allegations, I've said so many times, if I have the opportunity to have like a bionic prehensile tail, I'm gonna do it. And it's not because I consider myself any kind of like animal identity personally. It's just like, why not? I have an extra appendage to grab things with, and it's a tail. That's cool as fuck.
That would be cool.
I look forward to the future of prosthetics with technology. It'd be very cool. As long as it's not like fucking some dystopian Elon Musk fucking brain chip nonsense.
Yeah.
then that's terrifying.
Capitalism plus the bionic future is not a good combo.
Right. That's how we get the dystopian future, not the Star Trek future. Okay, we have one more caller left. We are going to take them in just a second. We're going to do super chats after. So any super chat of $5 or more, we will read out live on air. Hit that like and subscribe button, all that good stuff. And let's wrap it up here with Eli. Pronouns are he, they in Colorado. Wants to know if it's dead naming a term exclusively for trans people. Eli, you are live.
Hello. Yeah. But before we get into the topic, I just want to say, as a construction worker, I do find that Doc Ock was correct, and 4 extra arms would be amazing.
Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the main reason for my call was I was scrolling through TikTok, as you do, and Siobhan Thompson of Dimension 20 fame had released some kind of legal document to talk about like why she wasn't able to vote in the British elections a month back, I don't know, it feels like forever and no time at all at the same time. July 4th, I guess, technically is when it happened, right? But on that document was her legal name. And so a bunch of people in the comments started just blowing her up with, like, hello, legal name and whatnot. And she's a cis woman. And I was like, hey, this feels like dead naming. She never said this is a name I want to go by. We should stick with the name that she puts on all the work that she does. And then I got a lot of replies to that saying that dead naming is exclusively for trans people and it should not be applied to cis people because it takes away from the traumatic response to the use of someone's, like, a name they used to go by. And I figured this would be a good place to call because, well, I get a trans perspective, but also a lot of you guys know Jimmy, who I know doesn't go by his original name, legal name.
Mm-hmm.
You want to jump in on this?
Yeah. I think that we have no right to say that a cis person doesn't have trauma around the name that they were given by their parents. And, like, it really starts to feel like we're putting ourselves in competition. It's also very similar to, and it's like unrelated, but it's related, but the whole idea that, like, well, cis people can't have gender dysphoria. Only trans people's gender feelings are valid. It's like, no, you really don't want to position trans people as, like, a completely alien concept that cis people can't relate to at all. And, like, yeah, who are we to say that just because we have a greater distance between our ideal and where we started, that means that our pain is more valid somehow, or, like, it matters more? It's just really silly to me. So it's like a similar conversation here where, yeah, I couldn't have even told you that Siobhan had a different, like, I've been following her since she worked at College Humor, which is forever ago. College Humor got rid of their video department, like, quite a while ago. So yeah, I don't think that dead naming is something that is exclusive to the trans community. Obviously, that's kind of where it came from, but it's a concept now that reflects, like, an experience of having a name that you don't go by anymore, and then having people disrespect you by calling you by the name that you don't want to be called anymore. So it just doesn't make any sense to me to wall it off as though it's a completely different thing. And I know that there are some people who will claim, like, it's called a dead name because that's what, like, if you actually die and you're misgendered and dead named in death, like, that's why it's called a dead name, because it's the one that they would impose on you after your death. Like, that's not actually true. It's something that people came up with as a justification for why we call it dead naming. But, like, that's not the reason. So we need to, like, not pretend like this has to do with posthumous misgendering, because that obviously a lot of us are really freaked out by that. Makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Arden?
Yeah, I think I co-sign everything you said. I think the only thing I really have to add is, like, you know, sometimes you'll get fucking trolls who are going to be like, well, then why can't I dead name X.com or like, why are you allowed to detonate X.com? Okay, corporations are not people, and Elon Musk is a fucking fascist, so I'm gonna call his website whatever bullshit I feel like to clown on him. But like, yeah, no, absolutely. Disrespecting someone's wish for how they would like to be referred to is shitty, and I hold that for even people I don't like and disagree with strongly. Like, calling Caitlyn Jenner by her dead name is fucking wrong. She's an awful person. I don't think she deserves much of our sympathy for the way that other right-wingers treat her and things like this. But it's still fucking wrong to dead name and misgender her. Like, it's not... These things should not be... We shouldn't normalize these things being used as a weapon, I don't think. It's hard when you get to, like, internet comment sections on TikTok because... TikTok and Instagram, the comment sections are so fucking toxic all the time. Every time, if it's like a mom, you're gonna have a million people saying she's the worst mom ever, but for completely diametrically opposed reasons, like just scrolling down, you know? And I think when people are like, oh, you have a name you don't want to be referred to by? Well, this is the greatest opportunity for me to be a total fucking dickhead because it's the internet and that's how I want to operate. But like, yeah, no, it's wrong. And it does start with the trans community. And I can understand where people are coming from with, like, you know, maybe it's a different kind of disrespect, but that doesn't mean that we can't, like, use that language in a way that accurately conveys what's happening to this person.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It was just a moment for me that, like, so many people jumped on me for just using that set of words. I was like, oh, maybe I am wrong, but this still, like, watching it gives such a similar feeling to me of using someone's name or a name that someone used to go by to disrespect them. And I don't even know that it was necessarily disrespect, but it felt very weird and wrong. I don't know.
I think it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Sometimes trans people want to feel special. Like everybody else wants to feel special. And we're like, we own this term or we own this concept. And I broadly disagree with the concept that marginalized groups can own an entire concept or an entire phrase or whatever. So yeah, I can understand the type of person who got on your case about this. I just also happen to disagree that trans people are extra special and calling us by our previous name is like somehow more disrespectful or more harmful than any other person who's deserving of that respect.
I will say, I think it is, to me, a sign of a good ally when in this situation, like, I don't know Siobhan in this situation, but like with Jimmy, I know I've heard him be like, I'm reluctant to call it dead naming because I don't want to, like, step in on anyone's toes in that sort of way. I find it really touching when a cis person acknowledges something like that, because after that point I'm like, oh no, see, because you get it and because you understand, like, the weight of the trans experience, I'm more inclined to be like, no, you definitely can use it because you understand it and you're not trying to be disrespectful or undermine anything. And from my understanding, the D20 people are like super left-leaning and queer friendly, so
there is a trans person at the table, so.
Okay, yeah. So
yeah,
I'm sure this person is great, and I wouldn't be concerned about using it for them. You could definitely use it in a way that would be, like, toxic and trying to be anti-trans, but, like, I think we can suss the difference between those things.
Right. Well, thank you. I think that's all I really had to ask. So I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for your call,
so much,
Eli.
Eli.
Yep. All right.
Bye. Alrighty. We were in perfect sync from my ears, maybe not going out to the audience, but on Eli, we said it at the exact same time, which is one of those weird things when you have a delay to come into sync is almost more jarring than anything. I'm like, wait, that's not supposed to happen.
Speech jammer. It's like the speech jammer is like feeding you your own. Yeah.
yes. Okay, let me close out Colin's studio so we're not spending money on that while we do super chats. We are gonna dive in. Super chats, $5 or more. Give us your money. You don't need it. Kidding, of course. but we do appreciate them. All right. You want to go first?
Sure. $10 from Buchenvar says, changed my shift at work so I can finally catch some shows live. I would have preferred to be born the opposite gender, but have no interest in transition. Thoughts? I mean, first of all, that's hilarious that you changed your work schedule just to hang out with us. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that that's pretty normal for people early in their process. Like, yeah, I do wish that I could have been born the opposite, but like, am I really going to go through all the effort of transitioning? Because it seems like a lot of effort, you know? And sometimes people are just like, yeah, I've decided that I don't want to transition. And then some people are like, actually, I am going to. And it's like, you know, wherever your journey takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. I got nothing to add to that. You did it perfectly.
Ah.
$49.99. Wow, thank you from Kaveen. So glad to catch a live show. I've learned so much from the show about how to advocate for my trans friend and how to protect trans kids. Much love. Well, thank you so much, Kaveen. We appreciate it. Yes, hearts to you. It feels really good to know that the show is making that impact, because I haven't heard people mention that in a long time, and that is kind of like one of the core goals of the show. So
Twice in one day.
Yeah.
$49.99 from Narcissa. Thank you. That is very generous. And Narcissa has no comment.
Narcissa is in the comments all the time, so I'm sure if she wanted to say anything, we would boost that for her. £5 from Les Watts. In my last super chat, I misspoke. I announced I was gender fluid. Unfortunately, I mixed up my gender and my sexuality. I'm so embarrassed. My apologies. And your last super chat, was there one before? Wait, hold on. Let me go to fan funding page. I don't have a previous super chat from you today. I know I've seen your name plenty of times.
Might have been from last week or something.
Yeah, I mean, whether it was a mistake or a change in things, that's all cool, you know? Whatever.
No worries.
Yeah.
$20 from Jack Takabe. Celebrating coming out fully as non-binary and my new name, this show definitely helped me find my courage. And holy shit, it feels so good to be who I really am. Thank you. That's great to hear. So happy for you.
Yeah, very, very happy for you. We have $10 from Joe White. Arden, some of my friends who are sex workers have complicated positions on Harris, voting for her, but definitely not psyched. Do you have any thoughts in that context? Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing this is in reference to her time as AG. I know she had some bad rulings on sex workers that hurt sex workers pretty bad. So to me, politics and voting is like a game of chess. My position can be terrible. I can absolutely hate the position I'm in. But in my eyes, there's objectively a best move to get myself to a position that could be a winning position. And it seems to me to be the case that, well, maybe it's not as much of a turnaround of power dynamics as I would like, that voting for Harris is the best option. I understand people's frustrations, and I think it's valid to bring them up, but I think we really have to think about the kind of world we want to build and who is going to be the most amenable to it. And that doesn't mean that they're very amenable to it, but like compare Trump and Harris, who do you think is more likely to have a wiggle room on the topic of sex work? Well, to be fair, maybe there's an argument for Trump on that just because he has, a history there. But he is very much intertwined with Republicans, the Party of Family Values, Project 2025, which wants to make, pornography illegal. So I think, separating Trump, the personality, from the actual policies that he advocates for and the constituents that he represents, I think it's pretty obvious Harris is going to be a better option there. But it's totally valid to be frustrated and to be not satisfied. I think that's a completely reasonable position to be in.
For sure.
Oh, there we go.
$10 from Nikki D says, I learned so much from this show. Thanks. Well, thank you. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. £20 from Jackie Greenland. Hey, Jackie. Sending hugs to all the trans people in Florida this week, especially trans kids who now have to suffer the same way our trans kids do over here. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Florida passed in their legislation a trans healthcare ban for minors. It was stopped at the Florida federal court level, and then it was re-enabled at an appeals court either today or like earlier this week or something. So yeah, trans providers for trans care for minors is ceasing right now. So like we talked about on Chewed Gum, not this week but last week, there are trans kids in the United States of America today, right now as you're watching this, while you're eating pizza pockets and enjoying your little time on the internet. There's a trans child who is actively suffering because of what Republicans are trying to enact. And that is why these things are really important, why I've been so annoying on all this stuff.
Worthy of annoyance, TBH.
Yes.
£5 from Sean Isherwood. Oh God. It says, let n be a natural number, then 1 plus 2 to the second, plus 3 to the third, plus 4 to the 4, plus n to the n is less than or equal to, parentheses, 4 divided by e, end parentheses, n to the nth power, where e is Euler's number. Thank you for that very much.
Cool.
Appreciate you. Like, I don't understand. It's like I've just said something and I don't know what I've just said.
It does feel like I'm potentially saying something very problematic and I have no idea.
Like some hot button issue in the mathematics community.
Right. We do always say you can get us to say ridiculous things. So $9.99 from Louise Richardson. I make these mistakes too. When a friend and I were in a pizza restaurant, the waiter gave a name. I didn't listen to the later. I asked, where is she? My friend said, his name is Michael. Oh, yeah. Honestly, I actually had an experience recently where I thought somebody misgendered me, but I'm pretty sure it was genuinely just like a mistake and not an act of hostility at all. And it's one of those frustrating things as a trans person where you're hypersensitive to this stuff. And so it's like, is my safety at risk? Do I need to be concerned? Or is this just a casual mistake that's very normal and happens to everyone? Who knows? It's a roulette game.
Did they say ma'am or man? Questions.
Yeah, I think I heard a he, but they might have been referring to Matt too, but it was just weird because she was talking to me. But then she did it correctly later, so I don't fucking know. Doesn't matter.
$10 from Adrian Morgan. Thank you. Says, I'm a bigender trans man, and what that means for me is I feel a deep connection to both femme and masc gender, but move through life mostly as a man. In queer spaces, I present much more NB/femme though. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how it goes. Like, you kind of have to like pick one that you're okay with in most life, and then you get to actually be your bad self in queer spaces. That's cool. Thank you for your sharing. And
I
your
just want
donation.
to take a slight detour. So somebody called Panda Bro in chat just got their chat muted and said, if you're born with a dick, you ain't a chick. Well, Jackie, I happen to know that this is your account because you've outed yourself. So you're popping in here with this funny screen name acting like you're anonymous. You still haven't made a good fucking argument. Sucking Jordan Peterson's dick live on camera isn't an argument. You literally sound like the Wisdom of Peterson generator every time you talk. You suck at debate, and fuck you, eat shit.
Good stuff.
Another $10 or £10 from Sean Isherwood. What do you think of trans name chains and scholarly articles? People could be dead named outed potentially in reference to earlier work, which sucks. Non-binary, I can't watch live. I must have an early night. Little confused about the last sentence, but
I don't know what it means either. I don't think it means non-binary, but I think it's like unrelated, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, non-binary doesn't really make sense there, but yeah, I mean, I would think it would be preferable if an individual doesn't care, then like whatever. But I think it'd probably be preferable to have like an assumption that you should change it. But if they're not notified, I don't know how they could be held culpable for that. So
Netflix updated Elliot Page's name on previous like Umbrella Academy seasons, and maybe for Juno too. I can't remember if Juno's on Netflix, but yeah, they changed it. So it's like, it's possible.
That's cool. I appreciate that because Netflix doesn't have a great track record.
True. Yeah, let's give Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle another huge chunk of money.
Right.
Great. $10 from Misha Bartov says, I came out as gender fluid to my manager and submitted the preferred name as Misha instead of Mike. I'm scared and excited. Work made it really easy for me. I don't know why it can't be like that for everybody. I'm so glad that it worked well for you. Yeah, it's crazy how much it depends on where you live or like who your boss is. Like, am I going to get discriminated against today? But we got to take our wins where we can get them. And I'm happy for you that it went well.
Yeah, good for you. Thank you so much for donating. We have $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Neopronouns kind of remind me of totemic spirits or certain indigenous naming conventions. While it's linguistically awkward, it's not that odd. IMHO. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem is that the American gender system is so narrow that any deviation feels awkward. Like, even if you accept and want them to be able to freely express that, it's still doesn't jive with how your brain was oriented to think about these things when you're growing up. So I think it's only really awkward because we've designed a system where that makes it awkward.
Someone explained in the chat, thank you, Katarina, says NB in the Sean's super chat means nota bene, which is an explanatory note. So it's like EG,
okay,
kind of, in that it's an abbreviation in Latin.
That makes sense. Ooh, also, did I skip this one already? No, we haven't gotten there yet. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any super chats. There you go.
Mm-hmm. 499, thank you, from Sarah Wilson, says, have you thought of screening for more potential Transmask and NB hosts? Then Dr. Ben and Lux won't be the tokens and more perspectives are always welcome. Well, we have talked about this, although I will say, as far as our current set of regular hosts, we have Arden and Josie and me and Ben. Are those the only 4 regularly showing up right now?
Yeah. The 4 that are on the team.
Yeah. And we have, Katy has taken her hiatus. She'll ostensibly be back at some point, but I feel like it's fairly balanced right now. But yes, we have talked about who are some other people we could bring on as guests and see how they would do. It's an ongoing process, and we are probably going to have people on as guests a few times before we're yes, let's add you as a regular host. But yeah, we're thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate people bringing it up because I understand we are always talking about how we can try to do better with representation. It's hard because we also, since we're a big network, there's different people. We're going to not always agree on everything. We tend to like to have people on who already have a decent platform only because they're going to have skin in the game. So there's probably some brilliant people who would be a great addition to the team who are not viable for other reasons. There's people who we really wanted who personally didn't want to do this. It just wasn't an interest for them for a number of reasons. So yeah, it's hard to find people who this appeals to is what I'm getting at.
You got to to argue at least a little bit.
We do our best. $5 from Secular Felinist. I was reading about the possibility of uterus transplants for MTF in the near future, allowing the line between cis and trans women to blur. Thoughts? If they have the technology to do it, I endorse people doing whatever they want with their bodies.
Yep. And I think that it would kind of fundamentally change the nature of some of these conversations. Although, I mean, to be fair, transphobes are just going to keep moving the goalposts. They're going to be okay, well, you can give birth now, but you couldn't when you were born. It's neither could you when you were born, dumbass.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. 10 pounds from Jack says, I tuned in just after the spice. Fighting head emoji. If only this were recorded somewhere. I know. Sag. We should put up the spicy segments. It takes a couple of months for the segments to come out, but I think that the spicy ones are the ones that people are yeah, but I want to see that one bit and not have to comb through and figure out, it's annoying for some people, but for some people, they live for the spice.
Oh, true. I will say I have gotten the 2 first calls that you and Josie had with Matthew are edited and uploaded. We have a huge backlog of uploaded clips. So uploaded doesn't mean you'll necessarily see them right away, but they'll probably be coming relatively soon.
We just need a compilation. We're gonna have Matthew gets his own playlist.
Yeah, for real.
Let's see how long it takes to move him on these positions.
We've got $99.99. Wow, from Gecko36. iconic name. I don't know what 36 references, but Gecko's based. You are both awesome. This queer atheist mama bear of 20-something-year-old trans triplets.
Wow, impressive.
Appreciates you and the line. Yeah, interestingly, trans people, this is the problem with why it's so difficult to identify why someone's trans, because there have been trans twin studies that have shown that it does seem to be higher amongst twins, which would suggest some sort of genetic predisposition of some kind. My sibling is also trans, so like 2 people in one family, that's kind of crazy. It is very interesting. It's hard to know exactly. Yeah, it's fascinating. Love that for you.
I too have a trans sibling. But
Crazy.
yeah, that's extremely generous. Thank you so much, Gecko36. We really appreciate you.
For real.
$20 super chat from Crystal. Thank you. Says there is no way that Matthew could have called this many times / spoken to as many hosts as he has while calling being transgender delusional and citing false studies. I admire your patience and willingness to educate him anyway. I would like to think that we're making progress with him. And if we're not, he's a fun chew toy. You know, either way.
Yeah, I agree. I think you guys have to remember also that it's not always about the person we're talking to. Having another opportunity to explain why that study is bullshit is good, because more people are going to hear it. And now the next time that somebody runs into that, more people are going to be aware of the fact that it's bullshit and why it's bullshit. And so opportunities to present that, I'm always going to take as, I get tired of saying the same thing over and over again, but it's important.
Yep.
$5 from Jamnico6. Here's money to say ridiculous stuff. Some ridiculous stuff. Thank you, Jamnic.
Ridiculous stuff. Indeed. Another 5 from Jamnix. Thank you. Responding to @BreadBoxOfDoom, or saying @BreadBoxOfDoom asked for some non-bigoted weird shit for y'all to say. So, non-bigoted weird shit. True. Fact.
Yeah, that's great. Gotta leave it there. Weird shit. $5 from Alyssa Silverbow. It's weird how boys are hardly named Lance anymore because it used to be super popular. Back in medieval time, boys were named Lance a lot. Ha ha ha, Lance a lot. That's good.
We're doing
Thank
puns
you.
now.
I appreciate your puns, Alyssa.
€5 from Lenny says, Albert Einstein was a great guy. His brother Frank, though, he was a monster. That's solid. That's not even a pun, I don't think. Like, you got to take too many extra steps to figure that one out for it to be a true pun.
Wait, is that a pun? It went over my head if it is.
Albert Einstein and then Frank Einstein. Frank Einstein, monster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got it. Thank you. I needed it to be explained to me, but $5 from Dade Murphy. Do you know of any trans authors that you recommend? Yeah, Julia Serrano has some great books that kind of dive into like the theory and the lived experience in a way that I think is really articulate. I really love Janet Mock's memoirs, which she's the producer and writer for Pose, one of the lead producers and writers for that show. There are so many other good ones. Jennifer Finney Boylan is great. Kate Bornstein has had some great books. I haven't read Elliot Page's, but I would like to eventually read his memoir. Yeah, I tend to like memoirs for marginalized people because, like, the whole point is to understand their lived experience, and that is a good way to do that. So, do you have any?
I mean, yeah, I've got Jenny Boylan over here. I have a book called Trans Britain, whose author I can't read right now. And there was Alex Birdie's Journey to My Beard. Yeah, I also do memoirs a lot. I mean, I know someone personally who writes fiction under the name, I believe it's H.S. Callinger. It's like vampire fiction. So, you know. I have not read any of their books. I can't co-sign, but shout out.
That's cool.
$4.99 from Josie Rosie. Thank you, Josie. Says, I'm missing not being on the show, but enjoying watching it live. Still recovering from the DNC, but hope to be back on the show next week. Love. #Team Takis. Much love.
Aww.
I'm sorry that you're having to recover from the super spreader event at the DNC, but I hope that you feel better soon.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I have criticisms. Anyway.
Probably warranted. Yeah. All of the big events are always risky. I mean, I was on an airplane. I had just gotten COVID like a month ago, right? So I wasn't really worried about me getting it. My understanding is that the resistance that you get from getting it is pretty significant for like a month after. I was next to this guy in an airplane last month, right after I gotten over COVID, who was coughing hysterically next to me for the entire plane ride. And I was like, this is awful. I feel like I'm going to get it again just because you're coughing so much. Like the viral load I'm going to be exposed to is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's different enough from one strain to the other that you can get sick at Thanksgiving and again at Christmas. So still be careful.
Yes. $5 from Makia Typewriter. In response to weaponizing dead names, it feels to me like someone being racist towards someone who's awful. Like, by all means, insult the Asian next to me, but not me. I think I get what you're saying. The last part kind of confused me. Yes, I support not weaponizing racism towards someone just because they're bad.
Yeah.
As we pointed out, minorities are just people. People from any minority group can be bad people who do bad things, whether they're trans or black or Asian or whatever. Doesn't mean it's okay to suddenly start being racist or transphobic.
Which feels obvious to say, but
Yep.
So, we're going to say it. $5 from William Mattis says, me minding my own business. This show. Hey, here's those thoughts you buried a long time ago. I found them. Me. How dare. Oh no. Cracking eggs. You got to crack some eggs to make an omelet, Good luck making your omelet.
We're about to serve omelets like McDonald's out here.
True. It's a Denny's up in this bitch.
Wow. Another 100 from Bobtailed Trucker. Put this to good use. Thank you. We had 2 massive super chats. We really appreciate your guys' support. It goes a long way.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bobtailed Trucker is also just a killer username. Love that.
I do like it.
$20 from Mr. Borakua 10 says, genuine curiosity from a cis pan dude. Can being trans directly inform sexuality, or can it be construed as how things happen with respect to gender and sexual identity? Great show as well. Keep being loud. Yeah, I mean, I think being trans informs sexuality because sex is kind of a really gendered activity, which is like, this is where the whole autogynephilia theory comes from, is like, yeah, of course women want to have sex as women. Why are you pathologizing that? Yeah, and like your identity as a straight man probably feels pretty tangibly different to your identity as a transgender lesbian, even if the people you're attracted to are the same. Like, being a lesbian is different than being a straight guy. So, I think that there is a relationship there. If maybe it's not like a causal relationship or something, but like, yeah, it's definitely a part of transitioning as an adult. Of course, your sexuality is part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty sure most trans people would report that their sexuality changed at some point throughout the process of their transition. That's not because sexuality is the same as gender, but because, like you're saying, like, they're very interrelated for adults.
Mm-hmm. My attraction to women and my attraction to men feels different because my gender feels different in those different contexts.
Yeah.
Non-binary is so fun.
Even as a not non-binary person, that feels so relatable to me. Like, the experience of dating women as a woman versus dating men as a woman is just so radically different in so many ways. It's like hard to even compare them. €5 from Lenny. Any opinion on the new Batman Caped Crusader animated show? I don't know anything about it.
Watch Flashpoint Paradox is my response to that. It's a movie and it's really good.
Okay. I mean, I know, isn't one the character that's tangentially related to Batman, like, canonically trans? Is it like Poison Ivy or something like that? So I don't know if she's involved.
I have no idea.
That's relevant.
I think it's just like sometimes in the comics, different things happen and because they have the multiverse thing or whatever. I have no idea.
Yeah.
$5 from Secular Felinist says, Arden, who's your favorite DBZ character and why is it Beerus?
Beerus is pretty awesome. Who's my favorite DBZ character? I mean, I really love the Cell Saga. Cell Saga Gohan, when he goes Super Saiyan 2, to beat Cell with fucking Ghost Goku behind him, and they're doing the big blast, and like that was a pretty cool moment. Also, Boo as a character is just so much fun. So it's probably where I'm at.
I know nobody asked me, but my favorite is Vegeta. he's my favorite. I love him so much. Him and his little pink shirt.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the pink shirt.
Yeah. $5 from Haley Geringer says, I feel cheap after some of the recent generosity, but please take this anyway. # protect trans kids. Listen, every little bit is appreciated. Every little bit helps. Even if y'all are out there just supporting the show by liking, it's free and it's quick and it's easy, but like every little bit makes a difference to us. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Big time. $5 from William Mattis. How can a room full of married couples be empty, not a single person in it? That's a really good joke. But somebody did that on Tuesday. Not that you were there to know it, and I don't want to undermine your steam. But it was somebody who commented today on a super chat that did that. I just can't remember who it was. So, sorry, I didn't mean to take the wind out of your joke. I just was like, oh, wait, somebody just did that. And then I was like, oh, it wasn't even today. Oops. Thank you, though, William.
€5 from Jom Noorin says, thank you for all that you do on this show. You are all awesome. Greetings from Belgium. Greetings from USA. Received your greetings from Belgium. Thank you.
Thank you. $5 from Stephanie Helms, our call screener. Always fun, always ready, moving house soon. Also, Tori Peters. That must be an author. I haven't heard of. Again, go check out Transposition Steph doing that at midnight Central Time.
Good luck moving. It's a process. $10 from Matt Dillahunty. Oh my God. Wow, I've never seen that guy before. Asking Arden, Black's BBQ and Lockhart after make everyone jealous. Ooh, barbecue does sound really good, actually.
Probably. I do know Jimmy wanted to have work discussions after, but we can probably go, and that shouldn't be a problem. Although Lockhart is a little bit of a drive. We'll try not to make it take too long. I have to work this afternoon is all I'm telling you. All right, so we can go do it, but then I'm going to have to work when we get back, so... $5 from Stephanie Helms. Hell, I've got 2 lobster bakes coming up. Jordan Peterson won't be at either one.
Aw.
Nice.
Sad.
Oh, wow.
They're getting him in at the last minute here. $50 again from Bobtailed Trucker. Thank you. Says, by the way, I'm Arrow Ace, trans, atheist, and much more. I haven't committed to pronouns since they are part of our language and not forcing anyone to do whatever. Cheers. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you, Sharon. We appreciate you hanging out and chilling with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Bobtailed Trucker. Very generous today. $5 from Joe White. I'm watching some birds sitting in the sun. Those Baskin Robbins make me want ice cream. Nice.
Yum. Bird ice cream. It's just like the first place my brain went with that was like bones and feathers like sticking out of ice cream. Yeah, sorry everybody.
Nasty.
Oh no. $10. Thank you again from Mr. Borokua 10 says, Cell is my favorite bad guy. His vernacular changes as he absorbs the cyborgs. He's even had an intellect boost from his already big intellect. As for others, Vegeta is my fave. Such a change for him. Yeah. I haven't watched the original in such a long time. I watch the abridged Team 4-Star a lot of the time. So
yeah.
Yes, a lot
really
of the things are the same, but like they're also very dramatically like emphasized. So yeah. That's why Vegeta is my favorite though. Because he's like, I want to be a Super Saiyan. I wanna.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
That's right.
I love it.
Vegeta's such a great, like, oh my God. I feel like he's very much a bottom. Like, he really wants to be a top, but he gives bottom energy. Like,
He does,
sorry.
it's true. I mean, there's that. It's in canon. It's not even in the Team 4-Star. It's from canon where, like, Beerus strikes Bulma, and he absolutely rages out. He's like, "That's my Bulma!" and like loses it. I'm like, yes, simp. He's a simp, and we love him.
We love that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the caller today, even Matthew. I like to grind your gears a little bit. Okay, listen. Thank you to Seth for call screening. Thank you to the mods for being here today. Thank you to everyone for viewing. We really appreciate you all. Make sure you go to Luxander's channel, Luxander Reel. That should be in the description now. If it's not, then it's because I used the reuse settings from the last one, but I did change it last week. So hopefully it's in there.
I am in there. Yes.
Yes. Okay, we did it. So if you want to see its channel, you can go down to the description and go to that. I don't have anything else. You got anything else?
Nope. I'm streaming only on Wednesdays right now because Renaissance Festival is happening and I am going to be busy and tired a lot now. So very excited. Glad to be here.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much. If you would like to support the Line Network, please check out patreon.com/calltheline. Trying to get the volume to not overtake me. You get access to an exclusive podcast, the occasional Zoom Q&A, and getting your name on the credits like this, so everyone knows what an awesome supporter you are. Wow, Lux's camera broke right at the last second. No.
Here. No.
I can hear you. Okay, thank you everyone. We're wrapping up the show. Have a good week. Bye.